Delegate Paul Begay is present.
Honorable Paul Begay answered. Roll call. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown is present.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown answered. Roll call. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Charles Newton is present.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton answered. Roll call. Honorable Amber Canes Bakrati.
Yate Shada, Delegate Amber Canes Bakrati, present. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Canes Bakrati answered. Roll call. Honorable Speaker Seth Damon is present. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Mark Phelan.
I'm here, present.
Honorable Mark Phelan answered. Roll call. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Is present.
Honorable Pernell Halona answered. Roll call. Honorable Jamie Henio.
Yes, present.
Honorable Jamie Henio answered. Roll call. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Rick Nez.
Delegate Rick Nez is present.
Honorable Rick Nez answered. Roll call. Honorable Carl Slater.
Delegate Slater, present.
Honorable Carl Slater answered. Roll call. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. is present. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.
Present.
Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Otto So.
I'm here.
Honorable Otto So answered. Roll call. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Daniel So.
I'm present.
Honorable Daniel So answered. Roll call. Honorable Eugene So.
Oh, call this show.
Honorable Eugene So answered. Roll call. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Edison Winika. Honorable Edison Winika.
Here.
Honorable Edison Winika answered. Roll call. Honorable Edmund Yazzie.
Yeah.
Honorable Edmund Yazzie answered. Roll call. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair did not answer. Roll call. Going back up. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay. Honorable Almer Begay did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
Present.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. answered. Roll call. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. did not answer. Roll call. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair did not answer. Roll call. Speaker, you have 19 members present, including yourself. Honorable Elmer Begay answered roll call via text. 20 members present, including yourself.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for that. Coming out of recess with 20 members present. Do have a quorum. So let's go ahead and go on back. I do have,
Point of privilege, Speaker Delegate Crotty.
yes, Madam Chair, Karate, point of privilege.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. I want to bring to the attention, we asked for a project breakdown of 0086. What we received this morning or this afternoon was information we already had. We had the breakdown from NTWA with water, wastewater. We had the information from NTWA on electric connection to homes. And it looks like the only addition is simple division of possible chapter projects and housing. Speaker, we need the complete list for 86. We need the list from health. We need the list to include economic development. We need the list also to account for the housing with the veterans, the manufacturing, and housing for the former Bennett Freeze and the bathroom additions. We need that information, Speaker. If you could help us, I'd appreciate that.
That point of privilege, there was a question. And having the complete breakdown, especially on a legislation like this, we're talking about billions, $1 billion. Honorable Freeland, as a sponsor, again, if you could get your agents or yourself to get that complete breakdown of what your colleagues are asking for.
Speaker, what was provided should be suffice and should be understandable. And, you know, I don't know how much more of a complete breakdown my colleague is referring to. I mean, does she want names? Does she want identifications? What more does
Point
she
of order,
want?
Speaker, Delegate Crotty, point of order.
Hold on, Honorable Freeland. Madam Chair, Crowley, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Speaker. Our rules require a decorum. And I requested the information. I'm requesting information. It's been made by writing by delegates, and it's being requested again at this time. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Freeland.
Okay, we'll work on that, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. We are on the main motion of legislation 0086-22. So let me move on down to Honorable Madam Chair Crotty.
Point of privilege, Speaker.
Yes, point of privilege, Madam Chair Charles Nguyen.
Thank you. As Speaker, I raise this point of privilege under Rule 16, both A and B, regarding the rights and privilege of the Navajo Nation Council, and then also maintaining the dignity and integrity of the proceedings. Speaker, as a delegate representing the largest community on the Navajo Nation, as we proceed forward with this debate, I cannot in good conscience, debate this legislation without getting the information that I need. Otherwise, it's just a blind vote. And I did send an email because of the statement that was made by Division of Community Development Director about having the data in making a lot of these decisions. Now the email, the response that I got was, well, we're reaching out to your chapters. If you're going to stay on the record, you have the data, and then it should be easily sent our way when we're requesting. How many people in the Shiprock community have requested for brand new homes? How many people have requested for housing renovation? How many, of those people were assisted and how many were not assisted? And then what is the total, the total cost in making that decision? And then most importantly, what I want to know as speaker is, how was that information given to the entire Shiprock community in terms of, how the selection process was put about, or how it came about, speaker? And so if Delegate Freeland needs a little bit more time, speaker, perhaps we could go into another recess to allow his agents to gather the information. Again, even though we've been requesting this for several months now, in terms of what we need as delegates, so that we can take that back to our community. Again, speaker, under Rule 16, point of privilege, it's maintaining that dignity, integrity of the proceedings. If we don't have all of our information in front of us, how can we say that we made the right decision in the way that we voted? If you could help me with getting that information, speaker, thank you.
Again, the request from not only yourself, Madam Chair Crotty, Honorable Keon Begay, to get all the information that is going to the sponsor of the legislation. The question, Madam Chair Charles Newton, even going back to Madam Chair Crotty or Honorable Keon Begay, as this legislation is owned by the Navajo Nation Council right now. That's where this legislation is. It's up to the council to decide the direction of this of legislation 0086-22. If that legislation, if you're looking for direction and your colleagues want to know where that direction is and where certain things are at, whether it be further breakdown and there's more time that needs to be done. In the past, there's been given additional research and time at a work session. There's been tabled till the information's been given. But the clarity to understand is that we can only ask of what is given out. The demand for what is needed that colleagues might need in order to make the cleanest decision on any legislation. The Speaker's office will continue to ask for that information. Well, I think we will probably do that in a formal writing again. But again, that only can be asked of. It can't be recognized. It can't be forced of unless there is further recommendation to go into a third party action, which is sitting down with going line by line on legislation 086-22 in a work session, like I stated before, having a leadership meeting on the legislation, or even further discussing this to state that why can't we get all the information at hand, where we would have to go and ask the third organization of the Navajo Nation government, which is the judicial branch, to gather that information. That's the only understanding that we can support. We can only do so much in order to try to help assist colleagues in making sure we're getting as much information, what you're requesting of from the motion, from the individuals who sponsor legislation or individuals that come before the Navajo Nation Council to do reports like we have done in the past. So again, that request will go to the sponsor, Honorable Freeland, and to his agents to get that information. That, going back to Madam Chair Crotty. Question of privilege, Honorable Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Speaker. When we did 87, we didn't ask for breakdown. It was 44 million to be divided among delegates. And it was vague. And it still is vague. Now we're nitpicking on this 86. Come on, let's move forward. Let's get this 86 either
Speaker,
passed or not passed. That's our point of privilege. Thank you.
point of order, Speaker.
Vice Chair Smith, I think that was more of trying to understand what we're discussing in order for us to continue on. Again, raising a point of privilege is trying to maintain the decorum, and I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, at council, everybody has the right to push their position on why they're elected to this body in order to make an appropriate decision, especially on a legislation worth $1 billion. Madam Chair Charles Newton.
Speaker.
Point of order.
I did call a point of order because the remarks appear to be in violation of the established rules of council. Nitpicking is defined as looking for small or unimportant errors or faults, especially in order to criticize unnecessarily. If I'm going to be accused of nitpicking and asking questions for my community, then that means as delegates, we should not be asking any questions pertaining to a legislation. I find offense that Delegate Raymond Smith has used the term nitpicking when that is not what is happening. I have my community members asking me, who is going to get a home? How was that decision made? If I cannot answer their question, Speaker, how can I vote on this legislation knowing that
Point of order, Speaker.
That is, I understand where you're coming from, Madam Chair Charles Newton. That's the reason why I'm reaching out to the sponsor to try to get the information, but I can't go back to the sponsor unless we start debating this legislation. And I understand that's the reason why I raised that point to Vice Chair Smith, Madam Chair Charles Newton.
Speaker, it's not about going back to the sponsor, it's not using the word nitpicking. We're not nitpicking. We're just trying to get information.
Yes, I understand. I understand from the colleagues. That, Honorable Chairman Yazzie.
Yes, Speaker, I was going to say a point of order. Yes, for as we say, the integrity of the council, and without getting, if you say words that are being said, Speaker, please, I'm asking you to take control of the council and let's just move forward, sir.
Colleagues, we came this morning. We had an interesting morning, probably one of the most interesting mornings of debating the process of council that I ever had. Moving forward, I can't wrangle every single one of your minds or one of the decisions that you want to make, but I leave it up to you again to help assist this council moving forward. We can have a healthy debate on everything that we can do in not only talking about the decisions, the criticisms, or the justification on why or why not that certain things should go forward to make the best decision for the Navajo people. And I'm asking that we continue down that path. I know that this discussion right now of trying to spend $1 billion is a tough decision. And I'm asking the executive branch right now, I know what my colleagues are asking for, to have a complete breakdown of what the legislation 0086-22. Hopefully we get that information. There's been spurts of it here and there, And I know that that's something that's weathering on some of y'all's minds. Now, in order for us to continue to have that dialogue, I trust that the executive branch, working together with the FRF office, working with Dibble, working with the sponsor, Honorable Freeland, will get that information to us, colleagues. Continuing on the debate on 86-22, from here going forward, I ask that we continue to justify, not only justify and criticize, keep our criticisms on what we can do to maintain the decorum of this council, but really try to emphasize on what we need to do by the end of this day, or by the end of this week, or by the end of next week. The decisions that we have to make have to be collective in some way, somehow. That's something where maybe our office has not pushed enough, and maybe it's my fault, so my blame. But I'm trying to understand now. I have a direction where the council has voted down on 87-22. If the council continues to vote in this direction for the Honorable Slater's amendment and pushes through to have 86-22 while amended, move forward with 16 votes, and that's something that collectively we've done. But if it doesn't, and this goes down again, doesn't get the 16 votes, I highly think that we need to look at grasping together again and sitting down, maybe what Honorable Keon Begay said, and just keep going, day in, day out until we get this done. But please, colleagues, just remember, we're all here elected by the people, by your regions, and I know that is defending where you're coming from. I know you're trying to bring every single possible dollar back that you possibly can in order to build a better opportunity for your own constituents. And I think collectively at the end of the day, we can do that. So continuously to work together, have a healthy debate. I'm just asking of that today, colleagues. And if you get that information from you, Honorable Freeland, would be a beneficial help. So I'm asking of that Honorable Chief of Staff Chaco to get that information out to members of the council. Yeah. With that, I'm going to go on to legislation 86-22, which is we are on Amendment 1 right now. And on Amendment 1 is Honorable Carl Slater's amendment. And right now I have Madam Chair Amber Crotty up in the queue for her amendment. Madam Chair Crotty.
Speaker, thank you. This is Delegate Crotty. Speaker, are we on the amendment?
Yes, we're on the amendment, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. On the amendment and in comparing with the information that was provided, I would need the amending party, and I'm not sure how much information you have, Vice Chair Slater, on these projects. They're being proposed, but on your amendment, I would need you to identify the areas of Department of Health, what projects are being requested for that $79.4 million collectively, and then I'll reserve my time. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. 4 minutes and 22 seconds. I'm going to go to Honorable Elmer Begay next, and then I'll come back to you, Honorable Vice Chair Slater, for the response. Honorable Elmer Begay, good afternoon. On the amendment, on amendment number 1. Honorable Elmer Begay going twice.
Speaker, can I go ahead and reserve my time?
Yes. On the amendment, 4 minutes. 58 seconds. Sorry. That Is there any other comments or questions, colleagues, on what Keelan Begay? Shay, floor is yours.
Che. Do Baniel Kito Kodo Neta is Kishin. A coco. The chapters Bande Kayo Hataba Hinzi appreciate making that known as a che. A coco easy basa on Sister Zinge. Then she came not lenny that is not again. A late hour la she could a shot the meal so the quid shin on the yard. Been dead a coco. A shot the chi up which are a based on lenny chapters which are holding. Opa Yatio aid the base of Denizen had no. Shibana Shahidat's aid or the nebate base of Denzo Baha at some Kodoshes. That Dasatago Kodor Bayashti Quagashik aid or should end Linigi of the 5 chapters that I represent. And I'll continue to say this throughout this particular debate. This is the time that I got to defend my 5 chapters. No way around about it. So I guess those of you that are receiving more than the amount, I mean, Eshibinato, it's a sto. Ashintas eta, Pescata Sitot, a crochet equator when Disney. Then I'll so the latest information that I got is $15 million, but some of these are already probably should have been in the IHS waterline projects. Ishihit auto ajgibiho sota dot snoda pasashikya. Outer broadband that is connecting homes to these NHA housing. Why can't NHA cough up their own funding to connect broadband or fiber optic to the NH homes that they built? A conlat siki in hot iki to a diki to base of the panija that jo quaggy should be added by yashtish. A crochet could do the 5 chapters that I represent. Thought the mill of announced 8 out that the meal so 119 million. The Metadayila project. Yes, almost half of it is not eligible for Dortney, but that still leaves almost $50 million for projects. So how do you compare and reason to say that, okay, by chapter submitted $50 million worth of projects, but yet you're only being allocated $15 million. But before it was less than $5 million. Until I'm satisfied to say that, okay, we have sufficient funding going to my 5 chapters. So Dik at memo Ashla, I specifically made a statement clearly as possible that I'm asking for specific projects for a specific dollar amount for each of the chapters that I represent. I'm not sure. To be hot at a sheep and don't hit a whole night at Annie. Oh, and the has been Legoshi or Shashino, hot ashing Kita Soki that Epahosen. A quaggy has John Hapan, so case. Has your bait had it did. Has your endodni. I would ego a shade of Basashi headed on it as long as that we know that across the regions that we have at least, and that has but yet we're all equally had distributed the funding equally among our chapter our local chapters, but based on the seat in the dollar. So ede kodo ut abahanana seat or late to quit the shindi kabahana seat or ashibahana so hold just dollar. Because there the neck at your dots are a gay quag hezoshin habitat or tant or little hezos habitat or tant or little basashi kagi. So it negos sahon shlonda. So there's $1 billion and your chapters are receiving less than $1 million. There's a big problem right there. And I kept saying this, and I need to say this, that I need to know when put the budget together? Why wasn't I or even my chapters weren't being told or asked for any input at then? Og at de kwador on hich honan ya chiwa be la on he onan hit no ka hon za ta hoje shbanan a chabesa honit lo tiret an ni ko ko tero le la shake nana.
That, let me go back to Honorable Vice Chair Slater, and then I'll go back to the floor. I have Honorable Otto Sue in the queue. Honorable Slater.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. This amendment is something that I put together. It's not anyone else. I have been trying to listen and track our conversation for the past year, and especially in the context of both the bills 86 and 87. I was really happy to co-sponsor Delegate Crotty's legislation 8722, because I share similar thoughts to how a lot of you feel, and that is, we need to maximize the dollars that are going to come back to our communities and hopefully influence positive change for our currently living citizens and the future generations. That said, I know there's a lot of delegates who are invested into seeing all or certain aspects of 8622 moving forward. And I understand that the president desires that as well. So with that said, Delegate Crotty asked about the Department of Health expenditure plan. And in the amendment, I don't propose funding the full 79 million. I propose funding the detox facility and the transitional housing. So the detox facility is about 15.2 million and the transitional housing is about 4 million. And I sent out a condensed fact sheet that I had received from Dr. Jim at some point, and I hope you all have received that now. There's further information on this in the exhibits, and I'm trying to get a form of the exhibits that I can attach and send out. But of course, you all have a copy of the legislation and it's the same that's in there. In general, just speaking to the amendment, it preserves certain aspects of 86, but allows for the option, I shouldn't say the option, but a delegate region allocation. And that's my attempt to create a compromise that will hopefully be amenable to as many delegates as possible. So you'd keep the E911 rural addressing at 35 million, which I think is super important. We learned that in the pandemic for health response, describing where people's homes are. We know that that's very important. We're always talking about burnouts, and we need to be able to quickly locate homes in order to provide those services when they're unfortunately needed. So that's not even speaking to the economic development aspect of having a full rural addressing at E911. Keeping the cyber, I know that when I introduced the original hardship program and was a part of that, there was a real hesitance from the prior controller to move forward with obtaining the banking information and sensitive like social security numbers, things of that nature, maybe even driver's license numbers, identifiable information that could be used for direct deposits, because the Navajo Nation didn't have a particularly secure electronic system. So I think it is important to include that, and that's why I've personally decided to keep it in there. That is one of the better budget breakdowns within the exhibits. I just covered the detox treatment and the transitional mental health housing treatment, and then the water projects that are identified in there and then contained in those per delegate region breakdowns remains at the $215 million mark. For the power, I removed the Rama Power project because the council funded that. And so that brought the $100 million down to 96.4. Then there's 120 million, and that's to make up the difference between what's been paid out and projected to be paid out, with the remaining 30 odd million and our remaining citizens who are continuing to enroll with the nation and then apply for hardship. Then that's at 120 million. Broadband is the same broadband listings, or I should say programs. So you have the middle mile and the last mile for 40 and 60 million. And then you have a $20 million match, which would be the nation's contribution to future federal infrastructure funding. So I think that's a pretty intelligent way to go about it, so that we're not putting up, say, CISN or UUFB funding to make that match. I met with the Broadband Alliance, and they were interested in having more flexibility between the middle and last mile programs. And that's why there's language now included saying that based on the direction of the broadband office, there may be the opportunity to transfer funding between the two programs so that we can maximize the efficacy. For example, if they review a bunch of projects and it comes out in this competitive process that they need, say, $500,000 more to accomplish, middle or last mile, then with, I think it's the concurrence of the administrative oversight and DOJ, they could perform that sort of transfer. And that was really coming from our broadband partners, the people who have been assisting us, who were a part of the broadband work session that I requested and other delegates requested and helped organize. So I was trying to listen to them, and I think they have a lot of expertise there and some good ideas. In general, they're supportive of, I think, these broadband initiatives. I'm sure they'd like to see more, but we'd all like to see more in each one of these line items. And then in the non-veterans housing, the allocation was $50 million. And the exhibit said that it'd be per chapter. And so that remains within that breakdown. The veterans housing, if you remember when we got an update, it said, okay, it's going to be needs-based, so it's not going to be equal distribution. In the statute or the legislative language, I've placed it so that it is an equal distribution across the 24 delegate regions. So everyone will have an equal distribution or access to that funding within their delegate regions. And then I included the former Bennett Freeze housing. And then the regional housing manufacturing sites was originally at 50 million for 5 different sites. So I reduced that by 2. I think, we can start off with 3. And if this really is a good idea, the nation can figure out how to fund more of that in the future. But I don't want us to overextend ourselves. So I thought reducing that amount made sense. And so that's 3 different sites, and we'd funded at 30 million. I think the hope there is that NHA, perhaps even the private sector, could purchase these homes. And down the line, I think we need to look at how we can expand more housing development options on Navajo, building and using our own resources. Then for the bathroom additions, that program was initially solely needs-based and would be administered through DCD and I think NECA, with DCD doing the oversight, NECA doing the construction. On that end, it didn't say that it would be equal distribution. And so I think there was a lot of uncertainty from delegates thinking that, we're not going to have an equal access to this funding, and it's not going to help us. So in the legislative language, we're saying that it would be equal distribution. And we also have the language in there talking to septic and clean outs repairs. So it's issuing a directive to the executive branch to go and look at, through an initial eligibility determination, whether that is an allowable ARPA cost, so that it could either be built into delegate plans or that bathroom program. I think that's really important, as we know of either failed systems or systems that need to be cleaned out, and we want to preserve them so that they don't break in the future. And then there's the $500 for the contingency. I think that was put in there, and we should maintain it to allow for cost increases. If there's savings in certain projects or projects that don't move forward, then they could be potentially reprogrammed for such purpose. So, we started off with $1.07 billion left to allocate. The first bill that I sponsored allocated about 400 million, under 500 million, and we immediately got the water, electricity, broadband projects up and going again that were defunded under CARES, and then some of the other projects programs like the Small Business and Artisan Relief Program. And I share, the frustration of a lot of us that it took way too long to get them moving. So that said, a lot of them have gone forward. Then we had the 557 million for the hardship assistance program. And so what we were left with is $1,070,000,000. The president, I guess, when in Delegate Freeland's legislation had recommended that the executive branch would forfeit a little over $42 million of their administrative oversight funding, and that legislative branch would forfeit 5 million. So if you add all of that together, you get $1,117,450,398. And so I just went through all the programs and the funding amounts. You deduct all that out. What you're left with is $211,256,148. If you divide that by 24, then you get $8,802,340 per delegate region. And that would be funding that could be programmed for the purpose of, really any of the items that were identified in 8722. And I asked Ms. Bobroff to include the same review process and passage process for those delegate region allocations in this proposed amendment. So you would be bringing in what was in 8722 and replacing the section within 86 where it was all done administratively. And I think, what was it, $745,000 per chapter. So instead, we'll be passing legislations as council for the delegate regions, and it would also require the signature of the president. It doesn't limit the scope or types of project, but needs to make sure that they can be completed and that they will either fall under the government services 6.1 guideline, where there's a cap of 9.15 million right now, or you could use it for any of the other purposes like water, power, electricity, or broadband. So thank you for the opportunity to give a little overview, and look forward to answering other questions. I think this is just a good starting point, and through this discussion, and maybe we don't get through this today and we want to continue another time, but I hope it's at least a starting point for further discussion. I just don't see any amendments that aren't project specific, trying to get in projects for a particular chapter or a particular region. And instead, I want us to look holistically and think about the whole legislation instead of just me. But I'm not trying to knock any delegate. Of course, you're trying to do the best that you can for your chapters, but I think that piecemeal approach of just including specific projects isn't going to get us across the finish line in the end. And I really want us to just get something out the door as soon as possible that we all understand, that is good for our people, and where we're all accepting some compromise. Because I've been reviewing a lot of projects that were funded, years ago, and were assigned to DCD, and the cost increases have been tremendous. And looking at other capital construction projects for the district, the rate of inflation over the past couple of years has been tremendous. And I'm just super concerned that if we don't get something done soon, we're going to hamstring ourselves between the costs and then the supply chain issues that the nation is confronting. So doesn't discount anything that any delegate has brought up in terms of, project listings, all that stuff. But I've tried to whittle away, programs where there was a lot of uncertainty or there wasn't clear project listings, and only include ones that seem to be consensus items in some respect. But I think we still want to move forward on evaluating. So thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Vice Chair Slater. Let me go ahead and continue on down. Thank you. Sorry, colleagues, I had to refresh the system here. With that, let me go to Honorable Otto. Honorable Otto, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Speaker. All members of council, Mr. Slater, for bringing up your amendment here. Know that there was you have reformulated some of the costs, and I know that your discussions directly with the division directors and especially with Department of Health. The Department of Health had some projects that were very important, vital to the Special Diabetes Office program. And it looks like you have stricken out those proposals. Also, there was a proposal for a elderly living center with the City Healthcare Corporation that was an appropriate money for our seniors up in to the city area or in the western area. You know that we are lacking the elderly facilities, and that was one that I was very, very conscious of, and just wondering why you pulled those dollars out so that I have a better factual understanding on that, because an elderly living center is something that's very important. We did support your senior program buildings in Chinle. Wondering what was the rationale behind this. Thank you very much. Reserve my time.
$3:28 is your reserve time. That, colleagues, any other comments, questions before I go back to reserve time? Can you hear me? Oh, actually, you can't hear me. You hear me? Yeah, they can hear me. So let me go back to reserve time then. Madam Chair Charles in 4 minutes, 36 seconds.
Still waiting on the list, Speaker. I reserve my time.
4:33 reserve time. And we get the all right. Trying to text the staff members to see following up on those requests. Thank you, Madam Chair. We're trying to follow up. I just now text the Chief of Staff, Mr. Paul Chaco, to try to see what any more information that they're going to be sending over. With that, Madam Chair, Member Crotty, 4 minutes and 22 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. So, Vice Chair Slater, you went down a pretty comprehensive listing of what your amendment does. My question was the Department of Health. Information that I received was that, and in looking at this amendment, so funding for senior centers that was proposed, is that not part of your amendment? If you could help me understand where we're at when it comes to Department of Health, that would be helpful, Speaker. Thank you, and I reserve my time.
Thank you very much for that. 3 minutes and 43 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Elmer Begay. 4 minutes and 58 seconds on the amendment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, around my, it's a go down, Delegate Slater. The question I have is, I know that we have local contractors that we have, and we want to use them. I think they have their own contract, and also they have their own project managers that they have. They've been doing their business for so many years now, and they go out and do their own bids. Then they file their own federal income tax and things like that. So they're ready for it, and so I think we don't need to really hire any project managers. I don't know what they've been doing out in departments that we have with Navajo Nation. I've never seen them be on a contractor, being out there, to do their own business. So my question is, do we have any bathroom additions and also any water line extension? Do we have to go through NECA? That's my question. And the other one is on solars that we have. Do we have to all go through NTA to get those solars, or can we have maybe the other vendors we have that are available for that? Can that be open to them too, instead of NTA? So that'd be my two questions. I have to reserve my time, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Elmer Gay. Serve time at 3:09. We go back to Honorable Vice Chair Slater for response at this time. Honorable Slater.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. Delegate Otto, thank you very much for the question. Yes, the Tuba City elderly home is taken out in this proposed amendment, and I just want you to know it has my total support. I'm happy to support that. I know they had initially put in, I think, for 25 million, and they had submitted a comment on the legislation inquiring why that had been reduced to 15. And I think that was the president or Delegate Freeland trying to make all the puzzle pieces fit. And I had nothing to do with that. But that said, this is more restrictive federal funding. And I think it would be more advantageous to both Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporation, the clients that they serve, and the nation as a whole who would be invested in the project to take that allocation from CHSN or from some other Navajo Nation source where there isn't the same timelines on restriction for obligation and funding as they piecemeal together the funding for that. And I would happily be supportive of that for the $25 million figure that they had originally put in. I think it was 25. This is all from recollection on, me reviewing the legislation. So, if you want to introduce that legislation, you got Delegate Slater's support. I know how much effort has been put into that endeavor by Tuba City. They do a great job of updating the Health Education Human Services Committee. They do a great job at advocating for federal funding, and they've been successful on that front. And I want to see that project go forward. That said, the ARPA funding, I think this is a way that we can help spread I don't want to say peanut butter, but spread the resources that we've been allocated from the federal government for a wider impact across the whole nation. And by taking that out, it allows more of our people across the whole Navajo Nation to receive a benefit from ARPA. So, that was my prerogative. It's no one else's. I stand by it. And, if you or someone else wants to motion to include it, I think, you just got to work through all the numbers and try and figure out how to make that fit. But it would most likely decrease the allocation per delegate region. And I think that might run into some obstacles in terms of getting it across the finish line in this bill. So again, you got my support. I support the $25 million allocation. I think it's smarter to bring it out of CSN or maybe do a combination of funding sources from the nation. You could always look at, a loan to a certain respect, but again, happy to support that if you pull it forward for council consideration. Delegate Karate, to review the Department of Health projects again, you were the one who brought to my attention that, and this is something that irks me, when you go into the exhibits on the Daltex program in particular, so that's our senior program, it said that it was going to provide renovations for 88 senior centers and construction, I think, what was it, 11 more or something to that effect. Then you were able to obtain the actual listing that wasn't the same binder that had been provided to the HES committee and I think others on what the total repairs and needs are across the system. I thought that this legislation was going to fund all of that to the tune of $19 million. And instead, as you astutely found out, it was only going to, I think, focus on 4 regions or agencies, and it left out Eastern Agency. And so I thought that wasn't really equitable. And instead, if we put that funding into the chapter regional projects program, then the regions and the chapters and the delegates could get together, review what repairs or improvements need to be made. And if they elect to support those repairs and renovations and support to their senior centers within their district, then they could do that under their chapter/regional allocation. And just to reiterate that the Daltex improvements are not in there, and instead they're repurposed across the whole nation within that chapter regional allocation. So, you know, each region, chapter, delegate can work together and figure out, you know, is that the investment we want to make, or do we want to make an investment in broadband or, you know, some other program across the region? And I just believed it was not a very equitable program, and the way it was being advertised within the exhibit wasn't accurate from, you know, the information that you were able to obtain. And I really appreciate you submitting that to me. So that's out. The only 2 Department of Health programs that are funded are the detox treatment and the transitional mental health housing. And that's in the, what do they call it? The sort of summary sheet that I sent out to the council a little while ago after you asked the first question. None of the other programs, including the wellness centers, are in there. Again, the way that I interpreted it in the exhibits, it made it seem like there was a lot more that was going to be done across the entire Navajo Nation under the wellness center programs. And instead, it was really concentrated on only a few chapters. And I think that that money could be better spent, you know, on a regional or chapter level to make those improvements to, you know, wellness centers that exist at the chapter level if the communities elect to support them. And then Delegate Begay, your question, thank you very much, was about local contractors. And I think vendors for both solar projects and water lines. And with respect to that, I know that there were solar inclusions within the power section. And I think, I don't know if you want me to answer this question or you want to ask the administrative oversight for that. I don't want to get into any, how would you say it, questions of like I'm dictating procurement or someone else's. I think it gets a little bit hairy on the council floor when we do that, and it's better left to the executive branch to discuss it. We're supposed to set the policies and procedures. I think in every bill that we've worked on, we've tried to emphasize that we want Navajo Nation, Navajo owned, I'm talking about private citizens owned, not just the nation owned, working and obtaining these contracts and working hard for our people, because we want, you know, this funding to circulate and impact our communities and our economy. And I totally support what you're saying. So I don't see anything in the legislation that prohibits those sorts of vendors from moving forward. And particularly, I think under the chapter regional project side, I know that you have some certified chapters, or at least one in Delcon. And I think that, you know, the procurement would be coordinated between them and the executive branch. And that would just be to ensure, we're using the federal funds appropriately. We're not violating any of, Telecom Chapter or the Navajo Nation's policies and procedures. And I would expect that would make it available and open to all types of contractors within our system where, we have a priority for Navajo owned. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Speaker. I'm happy to stand for further questions, or if the delegates would like to ask the executive branch, I'm sure they can do that too. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. With that, let me go on down. It was on reserve time. Honorable Otto, 3 minutes and 28 seconds.
I'm going to reserve my time. Thank you.
That reserving time. 3:26. Colleagues, I don't have anybody else in the queue at this time. Let me go to
Delegate Henya?
Chairman Henya. Good evening. Floor is yours.
the Speaker Damon, Shanata, 24th Navajo Nation Council, Shanata, Vice Chancellor for introduce this amendment. I looking at the big picture here as far as how 87 was constructed and how you're trying to build some of that into this legislation is good. This brings me back to what our chapters staff and the leadership were working on before when the whole concept of CFS 31-21 came out, the application process and so forth. And there are smaller projects that the chapters need to move on when it comes to assisting their citizens within their communities, such as propane distribution. I mean, it's setting aside maybe like $150,000 to assist their community members with propane for the next couple of years, or maybe even helping them with wood hauling and stuff like that. Some energy type of assistance that each of our community members would need. And this would allow the delegates and their work to work with the chapters to be able to work on those applications and make that a reality. And so I do support the amendment based on this. And because right now we're just looking at big pictures of millions of dollars for big projects, but I'm looking at smaller projects that we can also use this allocation for. And so that's why I pretty much am in support of the amendment here as we build it into this legislation. I reserve my time.
That Chairman, 3 minutes and 13 seconds on reserve time. Any other comments, colleagues, before we go back to reserve time? We are on Amendment 1 on legislation 0086-22. If there's none, let me go back to reserve time. Madam Chair, Charles Newton, 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
Speaker, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Speaker. So really quickly, Delegate Slater, on page 4 of 12 of your amendment, you do have that chapters will not be able to assist with any hardship assistance. If we're allowing the chapters to make the decision in the way that their funds are being allocated, why would we limit what they can and can't do with those funds? I reserve my time.
That 4 minutes, 11 seconds. Let me go back to Honorable Vice Chair Slater. Where's my pen?
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Delegate Henyo. That's exactly in line with the discussions that I've had with my chapters and their leadership, and discussing and being prepared for either a $44 million allocation or something smaller than that. And during the pandemic, I personally did a lot of fundraising for my chapters for firewood and hay distributions and propane assistance, and then helped bring in World Central Kitchen. And the chapters under this would have that ability to do that type of relief. And I think that that's an important flexibility that they need. And I would totally support any community or delegate region performing that sort of assistance for their people over the next few years. Currently in a drought situation, as we have been in for many years, and I know folks are going to need water, they're going to need assistance for livestock and things of that nature. So reducing the burden on our people and getting more resources at the local level for distribution like that, I think is important. In terms of the hardship assistance, I think there's a way for chapters, either on an individual basis or maybe on a regional basis, to provide assistance to their people. But as we've seen with the hardship program that's been administered by the Office of the Controller, there's a lot of complexity to providing cash assistance to our people. And I know there are many delegates who have aired a lot of skepticism on the ability of chapters to administer and deliver programs in principle. And I think, some of that's warranted. Some of it is, I think, a frustration with the Navajo Nation system and how it impedes progress and program delivery. But having them perform such a big task like that, I think is ripe for audit findings with both the feds and the Navajo Nation. And I think that chapters that are not certified will have a lot of issues with that, on top of, what they're already having to perform and confront. And, I personally have 5 chapters that are not certified. And I'm hoping that all of them in the next year or so will be certified. But that said, I think it's just too much to bite off for chapters to administer, and it will really breed potentially a lot of mistrust from our citizens with chapters and administering those programs. There's always the allegation that, chapter officials only help the people they know or their family members or things like that. And I think we could just avoid that altogether by not having them administer that program. We can have the opportunity to reprogram leftover funding after 2024 or before the end of 2024 to hardship, and do that at a Navajo nationwide scale. So I think we should keep that option open and not saddle our chapters with too much on that end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Slater. Let me move on down on reserve time. Madam Chair Crowdy, 3 minutes and 43 seconds on Amendment 1.
Thank you, Speaker. So we got the answers regarding Department of Health. I'd like to move on to housing. I'm reviewing the exhibit. Can you point to where in the exhibit is the equitable distribution for housing? I'm trying to locate that language. Thank you, and I'll reserve my time.
Okay. That reserve time at 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Elmer Begay, 3 minutes and 9 seconds on reserve time.
Speaker, reserve my time.
Three minutes and 8 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Otto So, 3 minutes and 26 seconds.
Thank you very much. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, at Slater's amendment, and I believe the issue of the senior elderly living center is a very important piece, and it was deemed eligible by Department of Justice, and I can't support your amendment, because I think that's something that is there, and I think when we get to legislation, the next legislation down the road, this is where you could entertain that amendment there. But I think right now the amendment that you have in place does not really benefit our seniors in the area, in the Western, because you look at a lot of the funding allocations that has been done, and they were just trying to get a fair project out in the region so that we can have this elderly living facility there in Western Agency so that we can support and keep our elders there. Other than that, this is just my thought of the amendment that you proposed here. But with that, I'm going to go reserve my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That reserve time at 2 minutes. Let me go back to Honorable Vice Chair Slater at this time.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. With respect to Delegate Crotty's question on the equal distribution of housing, housing section starts on page 17 in the attachment that shows what the legislation would look like after amendment. And if you go to paragraph D, which I believe is on page 18, it says the eligibility criteria for receiving services under the housing projects assigned to CHID shall be approved by the Resources and Development Committee by resolution. Colleagues, can you just make sure you're muted? Oh, okay, thank you. Again, so paragraph D, the eligibility criteria for receiving services under the housing projects assigned to CHID shall be approved by the Resources and Development Committee by resolution and shall include equal distribution by delegate region. And then the next paragraph says, the eligibility criteria for receiving services under the Veterans Housing Projects Expenditure Plan assigned to the Veterans Housing Program shall be approved by the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee by resolution and shall include equal distribution by delegate region. So for those two programs in the bill, in the legislation, we're going to enforce that instead of leaving it to the exhibit. So I hope that answers your question about the equal distribution by delegate region. And Delegate Otto, so I understand you advocating for your community and where you have to stand on that. And
411?
I appreciate the zeal that you have for your communities and your people. And this is nothing prejudiced against Tuba City. Again, I just want to reiterate, I'll happily support this legislation for the long-term care facility if it comes forward to the council. And I think using flexible Navajo Nation dollars is just a better way to get it funded. That's why when I pursued the funding for the Veterans Home, I elected to use Navajo Nation funding instead of ARPA funding. So thank you very much, Speaker. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you very much with that. Let me go ahead and go back to the floor. I was on reserve time. Chairman Hinio, 3 minutes and 13 seconds.
Christina Ayala, to the Speaker Damon Kadosh Nata, 24th Nation Council, and Vice Chair Slater for your explanations on all the questions that are coming your way. And therefore, looking at the expenditure plan and how this amendment is put together, we still have to follow the law that the council had put forth in DFS 31-21. And it will make us work with our leadership closely to identify the local community needs that we want to pursue with the ARPA dollars, keeping in mind that we still have to follow the Treasury guidelines. This won't be a free-for-all. Still have to follow the Treasury guidelines. At the same time, we still would have to do the application process, which would be vetted by either community development or NDOJ or the FRF office. And so that's something that I really like the part of this amendment is that we still would be keeping in line with how we use the federal dollars, because they are, like you said, very restrictive, and we need to be mindful of that. So I do support again, and so therefore I reserve my time.
Reserve your time at 1 minute 54 seconds. That moving on down, Vice Chair Smith. Where's yours?
Good afternoon, Speaker, and the Navajo Nation Council of the 24th. Those that are listening with us this afternoon, and also Vice Chair Slater for this amendment to 0086-22. I have questions on page 4 of 12. Talks about the delegate region allocation in the amount of $8,802,340 set forth in Exhibit C. And I'm trying to look for Exhibit C, but I only see B and E in the compilation of the reporting guidance Exhibit A on the thick document here. The other one is number 1. It says we have 90 days once this legislation has been enacted. That means we're going to have time on our time clock's going to be running, so we got to move quickly. Trying to gear up for this if this does pass, and hopefully will pass. Get the chapters all situated so that we can move with these projects at 8.8 million, which is a difference from 44 million that was in the other legislation. However, in number 1, it states that if nothing has been provided, no supporting documents, 90 days, this legislation is fully enacted, the total allocation for that delegate region shall automatically revert to the Navajo Nation fiscal recovery. So does that mean the whole 8 million because you haven't made that 90 days? Or let's say you only did 2 million, is the rest are going to have to go back to and revert back to the Navajo Nation fiscal recovery? The other question is, let's say as time goes on, can the delegate come back and say, okay, we're ready for the other 6 million, as an example? Would that be permissible, or do we have to make an amendment to say in this language saying that those languages that, the projects that are pending can be, the money can be provided for said projects out there? The other one is, I know 5 minutes is not very long, so I'm trying to move as quickly as possible. The other one is page 512. It talks about construction projects, construction ready. If you read that A, it's making the council delegate a project manager, and that's something that we as council delegates appropriate funding, but we rely on NNFRF office to actually push these projects with DCD. But that CPA 35-18, we haven't spent half of that. It's been since 2018, and the 23rd Council passed that. So that's another concern on that behalf. Lastly, the one about the page 11 of 12, page 50 or number 50, it talks about 10 days enactment of this legislation, and Justice shall inform, Department of Justice shall inform delegates, chapters, Division of Community Development in writing whether septic tank cleaning is eligible. I thought they were already geared up to say it's not eligible. By looking at the criteria under 5.4, it does say anything but, it says clean water, combined sewer overflows. And I always hear across the Navajo Nation that there's septic failures, and this is something that we could utilize under the 8 million to get septic services and get contractors out there to help our families that need to get new septic services. And I think 5.4 they should already have this ready to say, okay, it's ready to go. This is where that criteria is. I'm not an attorney and I'm not interpreting this, but I reserve my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Through time at 34 seconds. That we move on back to Honorable Vice Chair Slater. 4 years for response.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Delegate Tenyo and Smith, for the support and questions. So Delegate Tenyo didn't have any questions, so I'm going to move on to Delegate Smith at this time. And Speaker, I hope you can afford an opportunity to Delegate Smith to clarify a couple of his questions or concerns. I didn't fully follow the whole set of concerns, but I guess speaking broadly about the making delegates project manager or making them project managers, I'm sure all of us here feel like I was elected to be a legislator, but you spend about 60% of your time chasing documents around and trying to understand where projects are out anyways, just the way that our system is right now. And I don't know how we can avoid that no matter how we move forward. So, you know, I pray for the day when we can allocate, appropriate, set the system up, and it will operate smoothly without our intervention into all of that. And I say that as a very exasperated delegate who you know, appreciates all the work of the Division of Community Development and how they're overwhelmed, but I'm just absolutely perplexed at how we haven't been able to get a couple fencing projects completed within the district that were allocated like 5 or 6 years ago. And we also haven't been able to get a simple sign in front of one of our chapters put up, again, with funding that was allocated years and years ago. So I know what you're saying, but that said, you know, our process as legislators are to allocate the funding, and then there will be the respective programs that are in charge of administering and delivering the project. So that's what will happen within this process. And at the outset, yes, it will be a responsibility of delegates working with those technical experts to understand what is ready to move forward and what I would say is doable within this time frame. And I would hesitate to say construction ready or you know, whatever term you want to use. But I don't know if colleagues, you saw this. I sent an email to Ms. Bobroff and I asked for an amendment to actually remove a couple paragraphs or modify the language within this chapter section, because I'll just flesh out an example for you. Say you've been working with your communities, you identified places of poor service, and you know that, okay, if we get a per delegate region allocation and we want to immediately invest, say, in a last mile project, and that would be a tower to do fixed point wireless, that you could move that forward without having all of the land withdrawn, all of those things, because I'm confident, you know, we can make that happen with whoever the provider will be, and you know, for constructing it and making that happen within the time frame that we have, as long as we pass this legislation, you know, soon. Maybe today, maybe another time. I don't want us to rush anything, but I think that that's a really important aspect that you brought up. And limiting everything to being construction ready really hamstrings a lot of chapters that aren't certified, and then a lot of programs, say out or chapters outside of New Mexico. The point that I know Delegate Crowdy's brought up many times, that there isn't a capital improvement program that's nationwide, and whether it's funded or not, that planning process still isn't taking place. Again, on the New Mexico side, a lot of those chapters have a little bit of a head start because of the allocations that come from the capital outlay process within the state. But I don't want us to disadvantage chapters because they're not provided the resources by Window-Rock to enact all of the things that they would like to when, you know, a windfall of funding comes. And we do need to be smarter with planning and doing all of that. And I've been trying to work with my chapters to make sure, we have projects and ideas ready to move once an ARPA bill passes, and there might be an opportunity for this sort of per delegate region breakdown. And, again, just want to reiterate, I hope that we can clarify some of that language so that we're making sure these projects can be encumbered by, I think it's September 30th, 2024, and then delivered by the end of 2026 and reported back to the federal government. So, that said, I hope that answers some of the questions. And if not, I hope I can provide further clarification. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I forgot to mention or respond to the septic. So all of us, I'm sure, receive inquiries about assistance for septic removal and then failed drain fields. And I know that my Fa'ash Delegate Kealan Begay has been really dogged in trying to crack that nut. How do we figure out how to support those people who have the failed drain fields or who have the septic systems that need to be cleared? And to that end, none of the initial eligibility determinations, and that's from the BFS, the Budget and Finance Resolution that Delegate Henio alluded to, none of them address that question. And so I went back to the executive branch and asked, have you guys evaluated that within the context of this legislation or just ARPA across the board for eligibility? And they hadn't. So that's why I wanted to issue the directive in this legislation so we can get the question answered. And then if there is an opportunity to fund it either under the bathroom addition side or on the per delegate region allocations, delegates will be armed with that information to help empower their communities and know what they can do or what they can't do with the ARPA funding. So that's really the purpose of that directive. And I know that Mr. Kuntz from NTUA has been toying with the concept with IHS on how to perhaps pay, a monthly fee, and then, whenever it's needed to be removed, the septic system or drained, et cetera, that individuals, will already have that service prepared and paid for, for a few bucks a month or something to that effect. And I really want us to have that clarity, for this funding. And then down the line, I want to encourage all of us to work with our providers, our utility providers, and IHS to address that issue and get funding for it in the future and have a system in place that meets our people where they are, instead of saying, it's just on you to clear it. And maybe they weren't provided instruction on how to take care of the system, or there are things that have happened, acts of nature that have affected the system, and they need assistance. So I think there's a smart way to do it. It won't be figured out completely probably in this program, but I think we can get it done soon. Thank you, Speaker. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Slater. Let me go back. I think there was I know you wanted further clarity on some questions that might have not been formally. Let me just go back to Vice Chair Smith without taking away from your time. Vice Chair Smith, there was some understanding, maybe further detail what you were trying to ask in your question. Vice Chair Smith, floor is yours.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Sui, for this legislation or this amendment here. On page 4 of 12, I was looking at the delegate region allocation of 8.8 million, which is Exhibit C. I got that Exhibit C, so I'm okay on that portion. But my question was on the 90-day provision, and it's got to be provided to the NNFRF office. And if they haven't received it, there's language in there saying that the monies will be automatically reverted to the Navajo Nation Fiscal Recovery Fund. So it sounds like if the delegate fails to provide that 8.8 million, or let's say if the delegate only does a fourth of it, does the other portion of it, the three-quarters of it, is it no longer available for the delegate? Let's say he only uses, or she only uses half of it, and then the other half reverts back. The other question is, can other delegates cannibalize that and say, okay, the other delegate didn't utilize the other half, so I'm going to attack the other half and bring it over to my chapter regions? Would there have to be language to guard that and to reopen it up for delegates to say, okay, I'm ready to go forth, and here is my 8.8 million. I didn't get it in by 90 days, but now I have it here in 120 days or 180 days or whatever. That's the concern I have on this language here. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, let me go back to Vice Chair Slater. I hope that clarified.
Yes, thank you, Speaker, and thank you very much, Chair Delegate Smith. I appreciate you clarifying and helping me out with that. Yeah, the way it reads right now, I believe, this will revert back to the FRF fund and to be, repurposed for either hardship or the contingency projects. And if you have a recommendation on how to clarify that, I'm all ears. I think, if the council is amenable and relatively supportive of this amendment, we can, take a beat and take a breath, review it again. And that would definitely be something that I think we can hone in on. If there's more concerns, if you have some suggested language, if you want to sit down with Ledge Council today or another time, I totally understand what you're saying. And I think, we've never done anything like this before. So we're uncovering some of these kind of discrete issues about, well, does it mean the whole amount? Or if you submit, like you said, okay, the delegate region submits $5 million worth of projects, does that mean they're out the door because they didn't do the full 8.8? My interpretation is no, that you would be able to use the 5, the remaining funding would go back to the fiscal recovery fund. If there's language that you think is more appropriate, tighter, et cetera, let's work on that. I think that's an important point that you brought up. And then in terms, or we could do a request to modify at this time if you have some ideas there. And then in terms of other delegates using the funding, I disagree with the words you used in that, just from a traditional perspective. But I think, again, it would go back to the fiscal relief fund. It wouldn't go back into the chapter or regional allocation. And again, just to clarify, this is a process that will be driven by, our local communities and then enacted into law by the council and signed by the president. It won't be a blank check to chapters or anything like that. There's still have to follow, these initial eligibility determinations to make sure that they're allowable costs, and then make sure that they can feasibly be completed or encumbered and then completed within the timeline of the legislation. So I hope that answers your question. And again, I think of this as a starting point to get the product that we're all comfortable with or can live with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That recommendation. That, colleagues, any other, is there anybody else in the queue? My queue has nothing. Thank you. I don't have everybody in the queue at this time, so let me go ahead and go back to reserve time.
Good choice.
Well, let me go to Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So.
Good chair.
Oh.
Carl Slater, not the professional. Bathroom did have a car. I don't know why we always say bathroom. Most of that comes from RSS. Water, what the comes from RSS. Bathroom, you have this. And I think the chapter has something open in regards to bathroom addition and housing escalator everything that it's it's all خيف نبغى هذا أجو كاسو نبغى شيء هذا roofing almost every house across the Navajo Nation needs repairs. I don't know how much money that we could spend on that. I don't know how long we're going to just keep it like that too. And then we're asking for a new house. I didn't need kids. I didn't know what in that stuff. You got any kids. I bet I could you have a car. You got any kid about it. Our government has taken away the land from Navajo people. It's another long walk that we're doing on the Navajo Nation. It's in people's land with all these regulations that we have in the code. So he could have had mostly those things to me we should attack. Never going to say that these corn here there. And there's a lot of restaurants out there that are not useful no more. They need to be repaired. Some are old, back in the 1960s. Yeah, those need to be redone, update them. Those are the ones that we need to go after. Things like all new house, fashion edition. I thought on teachers, we don't think about the people at grassroots. And how people live. We don't think about that. I don't want teachers the way I see it. We're just trying to give them a new house. Yeah, but how about the others? Yeah, fashion edition. Yeah, how about the others? How about the ones that are not being used that needs repairs? You need to go out there and find out everything where they are. Without them asking, just tell them we're going to repair this. Right now we're trying to tell them that we need to put an application down. When she thought that it any kids, Sayo Yamada the Edo, Sataya Yatando, Sato Sakato with us siblings, but for 10, 20 years they're still the same. There are different kind of people that think differently out there. So it seems that sometimes we do have some money, we don't think about those people down there. 80度有把机器按照过去放好的不可能，他啥的城市的平时有any以前的人，people that live way off more than a mile, 2 miles, some are 5, some are 10 miles off the road. They don't teach that. Then until you 8 hours, I can find how they but it's I can give me that 50 days. Water in the water line or the. So these are some of the issues that we have out there on the Navajo Nation. We need to see the Navajo Nation as is. That's why I always tell you I want to see the President of the United States because I want him to see a third world country on the Navajo Nation. How we live out there. This I ask on the kid. I let up in the dark and the 18. Some don't. We need to realize that. They don't teach it. Seems to me sometimes I feel that way. According to speaker, reserve my time.
Thank you very much, Honorable Eugene. So your time at 23 seconds. If there's no else in the queue, we'll go back to reserve time. Madam Chair Charles Newton, 4 minutes, 11 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Speaker. I've got a quick question. Can I get clarification on the following definitions? Project ready, shovel ready, construction ready in terms of the FRF funding. I reserve my time. Thank you, Speaker.
4 minutes. Madam Chair. That, let me go back to Honorable Slater. Vice Chair, floor is yours.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Delegate So, for your comments and concerns. I think they're really well said and well placed. With respect to bathroom additions, what's been testified on the council floor is that IHS is not responsible for them. And I think that's why, chapters perform that in a lot of instances. And in this instance, I think it'd be a combination of DCDN or chapters. So we know the needs out there, and this is a way to support that need under the responsibility of the nation, because I believe it's IHS that performs the construction and connections to the home, and then the chapters or some other entity performs the construction of the bathroom addition in compliance. And then with respect to regulations that the nation has, I think it's a real balancing act, right? We know of all too many people who confront issues of obtaining a home site lease because the permittee will not sign off on it. But we also have the permittees in our families that we want to support and say, well, there's only X amount of forage within this acreage, within our traditional homeland, and we want to make sure it's preserved, and it's done so in a way that's respective of how, in a lot of our families, our matriarchies have identified, where people live, where the grazing is, where the summer and winter camp is, where we'll have the tache, all the things that, traditional families have within their homesteads. And I agree. I don't think anyone has come up with that perfect answer on how to balance that sort of development. And it's something that we all confront in our communities. I'm all ears for any sort of suggestions or amendments, but I really strongly believe in our traditional way of life, but we have to figure out a way to balance it with the needs of all the people who aren't permittees. And that's, a balancing act the nation has been confronting for the last, I don't know how long, maybe 50, 60, even 70 years. And in each generation, we make amendments and we work on helping our people to the best extent that we can. So there's definitely no way to make everyone happy, but we got to make sure we're helping the most amount of people without eliminating what makes us Dene and identifies us to the holy people. So thank you for your comments. I really appreciate them. And then Delegate Charles Newton asked about shovel ready, project ready, and construction ready. And I think that the three of those are things that could be terms of art in some cases, or have very specific definitions depending on what the, say, funding source is or who's administering the funding. I know, there's specific requirements for the capital outlay program in the state of New Mexico. Same thing in Arizona and other states. There's requirements under Citizen or, say, the PTF or the road fund under the Navajo Nation. We pay our gas tax, and they all have varying definitions. Within this legislation, and I really appreciate you, Delegate Charles Newton, for honing in on this, because it's something that I have some discomfort with right now, and I would like to see amended. And that's the section where it talks about the project readiness. And I'm trying to scroll to it. If you just give me one moment. I think it's paragraphs 3 and 4, and it's under the section L of, sorry, I would say maybe, section L of section 3, or subparagraph L of section 3, and that's the chapter and regional projects expenditure plan. So let me scroll back down there, and it says, of course, all of the allocations have to be, allowable from the Treasury guidelines. And then it says all pre-construction related projects included in a delegate region project plans shall be quote unquote project ready, meaning that a project's planning and design work is able to begin once funding is received. So that's one definition of project ready. And then in paragraph 4, it says construction projects shall be construction ready, meaning that a project's planning and design work has been fully completed and construction is able to begin once funding is received. So the delegate will be responsible for working with the Fiscal Relief Fund Office and the Division of Community Development to make sure that something is construction ready. But this is where I would like to see an amendment, and I asked Ms. Bobroff to prepare that, because in that example that I outlined of, say, a cell tower, okay, we have a lot of chapters, they're not certified, they haven't been able to hire their consultants to, move forward a cell tower. I don't think there's a lot of us sitting at home who know how to do all the engineering and tie into the systems. I don't want to disadvantage those chapters in those communities. And I think that saying everything needs to be fully designed today, June 13th at 5:25 p.m. is too much of a restrictive burden that won't allow us to have the maximum impact for our people. So I think it'd be good to pass this amendment, and I would really encourage any delegates who might have more time than me right now to work with Ms. Bobroff. Otherwise, I'll continue doing that, whatever the disposition of this amendment is. So I appreciate that question, Delegate Charles Newton. That's the best that I can do to answer it at this time, and happy to answer further questions. Thank you, Speaker. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and continue on down. I don't have anybody else in the queue at this time still. Is there any other further comments or questions before I go back to reserve time? Go back to reserve time. Madam Chair, Amber Crotty, 3 minutes and 27 seconds on Amendment 1.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to ask questions regarding going back to the housing. So it looks like non-veteran housing and veteran housing will be equitably distributed. If I could have an understanding on what SB housing would be, and how that plays into the COVID response. And I'll reserve my time. Thank you, Speaker.
I am talking to myself. Madam Chair Crowdy, your time is 2 minutes and 57 seconds on reserve time. Going on down, Honorable Alma Brigade, 3 minutes and 8 seconds.
Speaker, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon again. I don't, just delegates later, I believe that I need a question to maybe the Division of Community Development, if they're still on the line, and then from the OPVP office, maybe Mr. Chalk is on the line, regarding the home site lease for water line and then power line extension. Is there any response from the land department? We've been asking this question for a long time, so that will be my question to CP, Division of Community Development and OPVP. Thank you, Speaker. Reserve my time.
2 minutes and 18 seconds on your reserve time. That we go back to Vice Chair Slater.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to speak to Delegate Begay's concern first, because I would like Delegate Crotty to restate her question. I don't know if it's the wind or what. She said something housing and what it would be, and I didn't really catch what that was. So I just would ask for that in a moment as a courtesy to herself and myself. But with respect to Delegate Begay's question, thank you. I know when we've had this discussion before, NTUA, IHS, any of the relevant infrastructure partners have explained that, it's a provision of Navajo Nation law. It's not something that is administrative, and that the president or a program director or some other department of the nation can waive the requirement for the home site lease to receive this sort of assistance for power lines and for water lines. And I know that that's the response right now. It's up to the council to decide whether we want to waive that provision. And I'm really open to that debate. That's not presently contained in the legislation, the waiver, but I think it's a pretty big conversation to have for the same reasons I brought up earlier about, balancing the rights of our traditional, livestock owners and the land and how we manage it with the needs for infrastructure for, people that are like my age, who want to come home and set up a house and live and do everything to be Danette here back at home. So, it's a requirement of Navajo law, and it's up to us if we want to remove it or waive it or temporarily suspend it. And if a delegate wants to bring that forward, I welcome that conversation. And I think we need to have that conversation. That said, I know that NTUA has done a pretty good job at working with folks when, they have the sign-offs for everything. And, they got the permittee's consent, they have, their ARC and their bio, all the things required for the home site lease. And maybe it hasn't been issued yet, but, there's basically an assurance from the land department that it's going to go forward. They just haven't had the opportunity to process the paperwork yet. And they still help move those people into their listings, whether it's Light Up Navajo, whether it's funding from CARES or from ARPA, and make sure that we're not just outright denying people because a piece of paper isn't signed yet, when there's a more holistic aspect to it and saying, okay, well, if everything has been signed off, it's just a matter of getting processed, and that might happen in a day, a week, or a month or so, that we're not going to deny them service. So, I appreciate when NTUA does that, but if you're asking a broader question, then I think it's a bigger conversation we need to have. So, Speaker, could you go back to Delegate Crotty so she could restate her question again?
Yes, I can. Vice Chair Slater. Madam Chair Crotty.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. I think with this wind, we're receiving all of Delegate Slater's sand, so I apologize. But if I could get a breakdown on the proposal in the funding for, I'm going back to it, for SBFA housing and where that's at in the exhibit for more information. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you.
Speaker,
Let me
Was
go
that
back to you, Vice Chair Slater.
was that former Bennett Freeze housing? Is that what the question was?
Madam Chair Crotty.
Yes, Speaker. For FBFA, former Bennett Freeze.
Okay,
and then
thank
something
you.
with an A, housing.
Okay, thank you. That Honorable Vice Chair Slater.
Thank you, Shema, Delegate Crotty. In paragraph 4 of, I guess, subparagraph B in section 10. So section 10 is the housing section. So you have paragraph A, then paragraph B, and then within B, you go down to 4, and that's where it identifies Exhibit L4 as the former Bennett Freeze area housing assistance to assist those 23 chapters that were impacted from the former Bennett Freeze. And I do not have that exhibit readily available in front of me, but I hope that that directs you to the appropriate exhibit. If you would like the executive branch to speak to it, I hope there's someone on the line to address that matter. I wanted to be supportive to the former Bennett Freeze because I know, there's a historical inequity there. And just as we've made investments on the New Mexico side to a lot of water projects that, really should be the responsibility of the federal government, we should have that sort of empathy to our relatives out there and try to assist them with some housing. So that's one of the reasons I personally decided to keep it in, but it's really the prerogative of the council on how they want to move the legislation forward. So that's just some of the logic. That's the citation in Exhibit L4. And then that's my answer right now. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Slater, with that, let me continue on down. Honorable Otto So with 2 minutes. Honorable Otto So.
Speaker, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was talking to myself. Well, I appreciate it that Honorable Slater is keeping in the FFBA portion. The former Bennett Freeze consists of 9 chapters and has been impacted by the Navajo Settlement Act. And when the Bennett Freeze was lifted, the nation agreed in rehabilitation efforts. At the time, the administration of the Shirley administration, they agreed to that, and the council at the time. That's the reason why I always say that the former Bennett Freeze will be at the expense of the Navajo Nation, not the federal government. Because the nation agreed that they would not seek any type of rehabilitation movements at Congress. I thank you for leaving that there. But the other aspect is that maybe we can rob Peter to pay Paul for the healthcare corporation portion in this amendment. But it's just something that I have. But right now, it's all I have to say for now. Reserve my time.
Speaker, I have the exhibit in front of me now, and I can speak to Delegate Crotty's question a little more clearly if you'd like. Otherwise, when you come back to me, I can answer it.
I'll come back to you, Vice Chair. Honorable Otto, so 44 seconds. That Chairman Henio, 1 minute and 54 seconds.
Kasi kailan sila Speaker Damon, those in the 21st Nomination Council, just listening to the conversation here, and I'm just hoping that my 3 chapters that I represent, leadership and the chapter administration, are listening to this debate on the amendment. And if it does move forward, along with the whole legislation from council to office of the president, I just hope that there are ideas floating right now and how we want to put that pen to the paper to get the application moving with all the supporting documents so we can meet that 90-day threshold to where we have the expenditure plan developed from each of the 3 chapters that I represent. Because I believe that this 90 days is time is not on our side. So 90 days, I feel it's good, a good amount of time to put everything together. And then once we get the expenditure plan together, then of course there's everything that follows that. That we have to do the budget. OMB was working with them to do the budget business unit numbers and their contracts. We have to go through the whole 164 process. And I just hope we could do something about that after this whole process is over with the legislation, that we need to address the 164, because that will be one of the biggest holdup, I believe, is when we did each delegate area, when we have contractors, there will be contracts will be made, then there would be an influx of contracts to OOC, and with their limited staff, I don't know how fast they'd be able to move these contracts out. And then, of course, once the contracts are given the contract number and so forth, I mean, there's time that it just sits there, I guess. And so again, I think you had lots of Speaker Dana.
That moving on down back to Honorable Slater, 4 years.
Thank you, Speaker. I have the exhibit for the former Bennett Freeze housing, and it says overcrowding and the lack of domestic water have added to the negative impacts of COVID-19. This project will address this problem in 2 ways. First, $14 million will be expended to purchase and transport modular homes that will serve the people of the 23 impacted chapters, the 9 Bennett Freeze chapters and the 14 MPL chapters. Second, $1.55 million will be expended to develop a plan for a manufactured housing plant in the Nahatutsil chapter. The plant will create the capacity for the Navajo Nation to make a long-term impact to the overcrowding problem and to create jobs for relocatees from the Navajo Hopi land dispute. Then when you go to, I think it's section C of the initial eligibility determination application, it speaks to the timeline. I'm not going to read the whole timeline out there, but it's envisioning a project commencement of August 1st of this year, and then outreach to the chapters. The manufacturing plant study begins, or sorry, the prioritized housing waiting list, then the plant study, then the RFP issued for the modular housing, then the contractor selected for the modular housing, and then the first batch of 16 homes delivered, and then completion of the plant study, and then the second batch of 17 homes delivered, and then finally the third batch of 17 homes delivered. So That is what has been proposed in order to help residents of the former Bennett Freeze area and is contained in that eligibility determination application. I hope that helps answer Delegate Crotty's question. Thank you, Speaker. I'll yield back to you.
How many? For Raymond Smith. Thank you very much. That well, yeah, I'm just continuing on reserve time. What was thank you. That moving on down on reserve time, 34 seconds. Vice Chair Smith, what was yours? I can't hear you.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'll reserve my time.
That 32 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Eugene So, 23 seconds. Eugene So.
Okay.
Oh.
Only a few seconds. I found a lot of consent for IA special mini phones in regards to water line and restrooms during my years, so I know where that money is coming from. The cash is one of the material about regards to the bathroom. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Eugene So. That on Amendment 1, I do have a new colleague in the queue. Honorable Jimmy Yellow here. Good evening. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Speaker Damon, in the 24th Navajo Nation Conference at yeah, the proposed legislation for FRF funds. Thank you, Slater. So thank you very much, Honorable Slater. I just want to bring to your attention, Navajo Nation Council, since my brother, Mr. Honorable Otto Slow, talks about benefits. Not only benefits, they also NPL, Navajo Petition Land. They also need to be there too. It should be, because it be 15. It's a part of $15 million, $550,000. 8 out 8 of it. So, Mr. Slater, Councilman Kenny, yeah, he's on the Shiba, they had any by dot and the party, died in the Salebe, Nasatil, Sanjunigo. But they are caution yes, it's going to take time. It's going to go through 164 process. It's going to take time. We all know that. It's going to slowly. I have to reserve my time. Speaker, yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna go here. So every time at 3 minutes, 55 seconds. Moving on down. Vice Chair Walker, good evening. Where's yours?
Oh, yes, good evening, Speaker, all members of the council, although the listening audience we have today, all day, and into the evening. Speaker and colleagues, although the sponsor of the legislation should take Honorable Freeland, then the to Honorable Slater, the holder of the amendment, appreciates the effort you have made in putting together an amendment for the council to consider. Obviously, you've put quite a bit of thought into this particular amendment. That's appreciated. I have a question on chapters that are sanctioned by the Auditor General's Office, by the BNF Committee, the RDC, sanctioned. So chapters that are on sanctioned status, how is this amendment, and then even the legislation, how would that affect those chapters? But we all know that the funding is from federal government. But then that when we received it, when the council received the funding, we approved it, we received it, and we created the fund management plans for it. So it then technically becomes Navajo funds. So and then of course our people, our constituents, the public, they see leaders talking, discussing how to distribute funding. And then when it comes to chapters, of course, they know that each respective chapter, the community members, the constituents there, chapter members, they know if their chapter is under sanction. They know that certain things chapters are prohibited from doing. So, Honorable Slater, that this question, of course, you can refer this to maybe legislative council or DOJ, maybe even Auditor General. That's my question, Speaker. I reserve my time.
Reserve your time at 1 minute, 16 seconds, Vice Chair Walker. That, we go back to Honorable Vice Chair Slater. Where's yours?
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for the questions and comments. I appreciate the feedback from my Chinle Agency colleague, Delegate Eugene So, my grandson, and Delegate Yellow Hair. I appreciate the comments. And yes, it's both the 9 former Bennett Frees and the NPL chapters that are included in that program. Shache, Delegate Walker, so speaking to your question, in the chapter allocation section, there's a paragraph E. And so, section 3 is the chapter and regional projects expenditure plan section. So if you go to paragraph E, says, actually, sorry, let's go to D and go to, I think, the second sentence. The chapter and regional projects expenditure plan and delegate region project plan funding will be allocated to the Navajo Nation central government, specifically the Division of Community Development or other appropriation Navajo Nation division or department to implement the projects rather than directly to the chapters. So the next paragraph there provides a little more flexibility per se. It says the Navajo Nation central government, specifically DCD or other appropriate Navajo Nation division or department, shall manage and administer funds and delegate region project plans on behalf of non-LGA certified chapters. The Navajo Nation central government may award funding to LGA certified chapters through subrecipient agreements to implement and manage specific projects, but shall maintain administrative oversight over such funding and delegate region project plans. Then you have a couple subparagraphs saying that the LGA certified chapters shall immediately return to the controller's office all project plan funds that remain unobligated and unencumbered as of 5 p.m. on September 30th, 2024. And then they have to return all chapter project plan funds that remain unexpended as of 5 p.m. September 30th, 2026. So in terms of oversight over chapters that are confronting difficulties through sanction, this allows for, I think, robust Navajo Nation internal controls to ensure funding can still be delivered for the benefit of community members, but are not inhibited by any issues that are being, worked on through corrective action plans or other, sanction remedies. So I hope that answers your question. And I think it provides the flexibility for both the LGA certified and the non-LGA certified to get those programs out the door, those projects out the door in an accountable manner. Thank you, Speaker. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Slater. With that, colleagues, I don't have anybody else in the queue. But I do have numerous colleagues with reserved time, so let me go ahead and go through reserve time. Before I do that, let me just do a recap. Colleagues, we are on amendment number 1 on legislation 0086-22. And if you're joining us, we're having a Navajo Nation Council special session on legislation 0086-22. We do, colleagues, also have, after this legislation, legislation 0063 and 60. I know that there was a number of delegates that want to pass that. That's a youth employment. And then also moving forward after on to there. But we do, just for a recap, I do have Madam Chair Charles Newton with 4 minutes, Madam Chair Amber Crotty, 2 minutes, 57 seconds, Honorable Elmer Brigade, 2 minutes, 18 seconds, Honorable Otto So, 44 seconds, Honorable Vice Chair Smith, 32 seconds, Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, 3 minutes, 55 seconds, and Vice Chair Walker with 1 minute, 16 seconds. And since there's nobody else in the queue, I'll go ahead and go back to reserve time. That, Honorable Madam Chair Charles Newton, 4 minutes.
I reserve my time, Speaker.
Every time, 3 minutes and 58 seconds. Moving on down, Madam Chair Crotty, 2 minutes and 57 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to ask Delegate or Vice Chair Slater for the manufacturing sites, if you could provide information on how those sites were selected and who's envisioned to work those sites? How are you reaching out to Navajo contractors to be our manufacturing of homes here on the nation? I'll reserve my time. Thank you.
That, thank you. Madam Chair Crotty, 2 minutes and 33 seconds on reserve time. Moving on down, Honorable Elmer Brigade. Good evening. You have 2 minutes, 18 seconds on reserve time.
Back to you, Speaker, reserve my time again.
Every time with 2 minutes, 16 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Otto So, 44 seconds. Honorable Otto So going twice. Honorable Otto So going 3 times. That, moving on down. Vice Chair Smith, 32 seconds.
I reserve my time, Speaker.
So every time is 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, 3 minutes, 55 seconds.
Share answer to Mr. Damon, Speaker of Navajo Nation in the Detox, 24 Councilman, my colleagues. I'd like to just to make my announcement to this coming summer. We're going to have a very heavy drought all over in Navajo Nation. We in Black Mesa, we're going to be in dire needs to build a dam or restore dam. We're going to dire needs for water. Windmills, when it gets really hot, there'll be no water at all. Because it's not windy too. We're going to be in need for water. Mr. Slater, other than 24 Councilman, deep pesos up, need to be on in 110 chapters. We need water to build a dam. Black Mesa, and the hard red areas all the way to Forest Lake, Stone Lake to Black Mesa. We need to build a dam. This water, the water just goes down to Hopi country. Then from there, probably goes down to Phoenix. We need to get this water to hold the water. To the stream of water, Mr. Slater. She's not 24 Councilman. I see Quebec Cottage. It's this coming summer. They once it's clear that I'd like to have if they modify, I'm gonna need like maybe $27 million to get this project going for water. We are darn needs water. That's what I want to have. Want to be used part of this American Rescue Plan Act funds. Even caught all was in that. Speaker Damon, thank you very much. I'll save my remaining time. So these things here, go back on mute now. Speaker, are you still there, sir?
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much, Honorable Yellowhair. Every time at 1 minute 52 seconds. 1 minute 52 seconds. 1 minute and I guess I said that right. 1 minute and 52 seconds. Thank you, Honorable Yellowhair. Moving on down. Vice Chair Walker, 1 minute and 16 seconds.
Speaker, though, members of council, although sponsor of the legislation and then the sponsor of the amendment, Mitsui Honorable Slater. Thank you for answering my question earlier. As you know, colleagues know that I represent 5 chapters out of Western Agency. 4 of the 5, they're within the former Bennett Freeze areas. Earlier was mentioned that 9 chapters, that's what the former Bennett Freeze area is. So 4 of those chapters I represent. I guess a question, how was the $15 million here for housing, how was that derived at that number? I gave my question, I reserve my time.
Thank you. That reserve time at 18 seconds. Let me continue on down to, I do have Honorable Herman Daniels in the queue. Honorable Daniels? Floor is yours at this time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Yeah. Arunana Koto Snata, Senate 24th Council. Yeah, Koto Arunana Koto, Seth Kahasing Koto, Tainos Klagi Koto, Marita chapter official Santa Ispa, Arunana Koto, our constituency. That's Central Tanais, wow, yeah. I don't Koto Nagata, my brother Koto Delegate Freeland. Thank you for the legislation Koto Gitanin Source, Arunana Koto Amendment, Koto Ben Night, Zaki Koto. Such can't go to Satai as a delegate Slater, yeah, Ecuador. Or these are a up at the Honet, but these are it's not on this. If you are, yeah, it's not on this. What on this, what these are, no, so this amendment. But what echo, these are easy, such what I here called. I said, oh. Stat onze hodnek och då jag skådade så på att det gick då har sin så det är då läs noi ja amendment jag EIC här går det så där jag så delegate Slater call working together is very important kodo communication is very important the cooperating Julia ho actually need she's not gonna cover all the needs out there at the local level, and that we really need to pass this legislation today, this evening. Because construction season is already. We're probably in the middle of the construction season. Winter season, winter months is going to be here. Construction season or the lot of dollars. So it is I see about this thing so I see here the great delegate region the great projects 8 million per plus per delegate region again. What is in Kodo Ben that one so AIC Kodo and that's in great any or the Kodo great former benefits area and also in PL area. I'm really thinking about our Navajo people that live way out there in the remote areas. Several months ago, RDC, they did a tour Navajo Mountain, not just on Adole Payet Mesa, on top of Payet Mesa, there's families living on in that area in need of electricity and water. So that that's kids people are constituents could the kid had indicate then down there under down had the ADI that's case of that or the so other could amendment needs like up on that could on a nation that's a thing abi that go let go. So it is also about Mr. Speaker, reserve time.
That, let me go back to Vice Chair Slater. 1 minute, 29 seconds is what you have in reserve time, Honorable Daniels. Vice Chair Slater.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for the questions and the concerns. Shama Delegate Karate asked about the house manufacturing, and that's in Exhibit L3. Like I said earlier, the initial proposal was for 5 sites, and I whittled that down to 3. And in the initial eligibility determination in section C of that application, it says the 5 locations are Tuba City, parentheses, site selected, Sanders, parentheses, site selected, Chinle, Shiprock, and Gallup area. And I believe because this program is to be administered and delivered by CHID, that they would be best to speak to the site selection. But I also would like to reference in that paragraph 3 of the amendment as it's proposed, that the administrative oversight would be by the Division of Community Development, and the legislative oversight for that program would be by the Resources and Development Committee. So I believe there should be strong oversight in the implementation, design, and delivery of the program by RDC. And the way that I believe this is written is that, yes, there's 3 that are authorized to be constructed, but it's not saying they have to be in particular places right now. And I would expect that CHID would look at a way to maximize the effectiveness of the program across the whole Navajo Nation, and of course not concentrate all of these within a particular area. I am wholly open to any sort of amendment to clarify how you believe the program should be delivered, or whether you believe it should be taken out and included in the delegate region allocations. And that's how those regional plans can look at procuring homes for people within their communities. So welcome to any thoughts. I just wanted to provide some clarity from how I understand things. And again, that's paragraph 3 in that housing section. Delegate Yellowhair spoke to getting the earthen dams fixed, and I totally agree with you, Delegate Yellowhair. I appreciate you standing up and issuing your support for that. I believe that we've had some presentations about the allowable and eligible costs under the ARPA program, and I would say the Fiscal Recovery Fund specifically. And it's my understanding that the funding is not explicitly authorized for agricultural purposes. And maybe if the projects are tied back into water projects that will deliver potable water to the home and sanitation to the home, those projects could be considered. If not, then I think the best way to fund earthen dam fixes and other related agricultural maintenance or improvements would be under that 6.1 category, which is government services. And so the way that we would fund government services in this program is it'd be by those delegate region allocations. And so right now, the funding to the delegate regions is 8.8 million. And say for some reason that number increases and it's over the 9.15, you can only spend money on those general government services to the extent that revenues to the government declined for certain periods impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the calculations that have been provided thus far would allow for the 9.15 million to be used for government services. So we don't have that in the legislation all the way up to that amount, to 9.1. We're about 300,000 under that with the 8.8. But that would be my advice to you, if this amendment passes, that it would be a way to program funding for those purposes, for the agricultural uses. Shache, Delegate Walker asked about the number derived for the former Bennett Freeze housing. And I believe that was constructed by the Navajo Hopi Land Commission office, and they're the ones who put that together. If you would like to ask questions of them directly, then please do so the next time you're asking questions when we go around the horn. I appreciate the comments from Delegate Daniels, and I I hope that this will help our people in remote areas and that we continue discussing this legislation in a positive way where we're thinking about our people and trying to do the best by them in a really difficult set of, compromises and discussion points for all of us. So thank you, Speaker, and I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater. And I got two new colleagues in the queue. Honorable Stewart, good evening. Floor is yours.
Oh, good evening to the Speaker, Vice Chairman Slater, our colleagues, not any be our staff, our is not going job baggy. Just want to ask through this through this amendment, the areas of the economic growth, a small businesses, how and that is that going to be under where I see the economic probably there was a title that was in there. But would it be under that one, Ash? And then also with that, it also saw in parentheses that's something about the the not being allocated by delegates or something. So how would that work, Ash, on that one? Knowing that what we've been hearing from the CDFI and the Net Chamber and also the other entities like that, including the small businesses in those areas, that would be number one. Number two, under the detox and treatment centers, I do have one within Chen Li that's an extension program from the data time program here in Fort Defiance that Eugene So and I are trying to get a facility, but we keep getting pushback from the Division of Health. Just to make that aware, that we are trying to push for some items, and that's one of them that gets kind of kicked around a little bit. So, but I would like to push those. I do like your amendment. It does speak to both sides and what we need to do. And this is something that we need to pass this evening, and I want to see that and get these funds out there, not only for the chapters, but for also the small businesses and the entities on that side for economic growth and development. This is physical recovery funding, and I know our chapters are in that need as well. I saw one earlier too from Sullivan's James's area, requesting for chapter economic growth and exploration. So in the Bonses case, how are we going to get our community members out there to start and establish their businesses wherever it may be, establishing a small farm plots to horse training, to horseshoeing, to agriculture, wherever it may be, as long as there's some type of physical recovery. And so silversmithing, weaving, the things that we talk about in all of our committee meetings from different areas that we have heard. Those are things I want to address. And then if at all possible, select Speaker, if we can, after these questions, ask for a cease debate. I don't know, it's up to my colleagues as well. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Stewart. With that, we'll go back to Vice Chair Slater to answer those questions. But before I go, I do have Honorable Freeland in the queue at this time. Honorable Freeland.
No, Speaker, I didn't ask to be placed in the queue. That was a mistake.
Okay. Sorry, Honorable Freeland. Yes, staff got misinterrupted or misdirected.
Hinya, point of privilege.
Chairman Hinya, point of privilege.
Yes, I thought I heard a motion to cease debate from Delegate Wilson Stewart Jr.
No, he stated that he'd like to have that information answered. And then he suggested that after his questions were answered, then if somebody could, one of the colleagues, or he tossed it out there to anybody to recognize that there could be a motion to cease debate. That was under my understanding. Chairman Henia. Honorable Stewart.
Yes, just a little, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That, since, where we at? Stewart. Oh, we're supposed to switch time. Okay. That, colleagues, I'm gonna go back to reserve time. And Chair Charles Newton, 3 minutes and 58 seconds.
Speaker, can you hear me?
Yes,
I reserve my time.
3 minutes and 56 seconds. Went on down, Madam Chair, Amber Crotty, 2 minutes and 33 seconds.
Speaker, this is Delegate Crotty. Thank you for the answer. I wanted to ask Vice Chair Slater. So now on this amendment, there's housing, manufacturing in Western, in Central, in Fort Defiance, in Eastern. What is Northern Agency getting in terms of housing, as we have all the needs in addition to contaminated homes, the uranium homes, homes that are being destroyed now by all of these sandstorms? I don't see how this plan addresses Northern Agency housing needs, and I'll reserve my time.
I'll reserve your time at 1 minute, 54 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Elmer Begay. 2 minutes and 16 seconds on reserve time.
Speaker, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, Speaker, good afternoon. Good. I wrote, my question goes to Delegate Slater again. I know that you mentioned about if this legislation and the amendment passed, well, I was thinking about the certified chapters that we have, and we want to know that the language that you put in there regarding the how much do we have for certified chapters to hire their own local contractors for water line and bathroom additions and the solars. I think we're more, my communities are more interested in that. And we know that NTA has a listing of solar recipients. They're the one that came into their district office where they applied it for. But can we get that funding for, if open for other vendors? Is there a chance, and I don't know how your language is being written like that too. Then also their language that are put into this amendment. Can certified chapters be more getting their own contractors to hire to do the bathroom additions and water line? Is my time, Speaker? Thank you.
Reserve your time in 24 seconds. I'll go back to Vice Chair Slater at this time. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for the questions. Delegate Wilson Stewart asked about small business, economic growth, and those items in the first part of his question, and then honed in specifically on the CDFI and the Danette Chamber. And I know that Delegate Stewart's been a really forceful advocate for Navajo CDFI and our small businesses. And presently in this legislation, there's no allocation to the CDFI. I know they're seeking to replenish their loan fund, which was decimated during the pandemic as our small business owners were not able to continue their loan payments because they had no revenue coming in from the shutdowns and the lockdowns and people staying on the reservation and not expending their disposable income with all that uncertainty. So there isn't an economic development section of the legislation in the amendment. In the original legislation, there was a lot of the programs were for cleanups of certain areas. And in the ARPA regulations for the Fiscal Recovery Fund, it says that the economic development or economic projects really need to be tourism related, or I think taking care of like abandonment or blight or things of that nature. So I think that's what influenced the original composition. But because those projects were so inequitably allocated, I thought it made sense to remove them so that on a per region or per chapter basis, communities could decide, okay, do we want to invest in that sort of purpose, like a tourism related activity? Or do we want to invest, in removing some of these abandoned trading post sites or other sorts of abandoned areas that haven't been remediated so that we can repurpose them in the future. So, to that end, that's where chapters or communities could pursue that type of support. And I think that you may be introducing legislation to help replenish the CDFI. I'm supportive of that. I've wanted to see a little more data on all of it, but we need to help our people out and help them get back on their feet again after being decimated by COVID for a lot of their businesses. And there is an allowance for ARPA fiscal recovery funds to make that sort of assistance, but as we know, it has to be tied back to the reduction in income that those businesses had. And that's where I think in the future, having a strong CDFI and standing up a bank on the Navajo Nation, will be in a better position to assist folks. There were those EIDL loans and those Paycheck Protection Program funds under the CARES Act, and our people were disadvantaged because a lot of them don't have loan relationships or other sorts of financial relationships with banks, which some are located on Navajo, like Wells Fargo, and a lot that are located off Navajo. And what those banks did is they pushed out that funding to their existing loan clients. And that was, I think it's a civil rights violation, but that's just me, because they specifically didn't allow for assistance really to our people. They only pushed it out to the border town folks and then those privileged businesses that had access to that sort of funding. So in the future, a lot of us are working on that Navajo Nation Bank proposal and trying to get it stood up. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to provide that sort of assistance to people if we create a bank. There's a lot of regulations there, though. The second aspect that you asked about was the detox and treatment centers and the 1 day at a time club. I understand the frustration in working with the Department of Health, and I think that we've had a presentation facilitated by yourself and by Delegate Eugene So before the Health Education Human Services Committee, and I think we need to bring you and the Day at a Time Club back to the committee to have more in-depth conversation on how we can help resource that program going forward and make sure all the good work they're doing is better supported by Navajo. And if you want to, get on the HESI agenda, just let Chair So or myself know, and we can get that going again. So thank you for your concerns, and I hope that we can continue to work together in the future. Delegate Crotty asked about Northern Agency housing needs, and in the $50 million for housing to CHID, that is equal distribution. Under the manufacturing side, there's 3 sites selected. So I shouldn't say selected, there's 3 sites authorized to be constructed. And if there's language that Shema Delegate Crotty you'd like to work on for that program, if you'd like to tailor it in some respect, I'm all ears. I'm happy to work on that with you now or at a future time and help ensure that what you're trying to do on behalf of Northern Agency and your communities is felt and is good. I had done some preliminary investigations of house manufacturing and modular home construction back when we were anticipating CARES Act funding. And I tried to find an enterprise of the nation that would pursue this endeavor. And I did a lot of research. I'm definitely not an expert, but it's my understanding that you didn't necessarily need 5 different sites to support the internal need on Navajo, or if you were going to look at having a commercial aspect, that the number of lines within each one of these facilities is probably more than enough, and that the operations of the sites wouldn't be dedicated exclusively to the area that they'd be constructed in, but they're supposed to be for the benefit of the whole Navajo Nation. And that's what I see in this, but there's employment opportunities that come with these sorts of things. And if that's something you're trying to dedicate to Northern Agency or ensure that they have access to that, then let's work together and find something there. Or if you think we need to set this program aside and investigate, standing something up like this in a different way, I'm all ears. So I appreciate your feedback and just want to emphasize that for the direct housing procurement under the 50 million, that's by equitable distribution. And then the site manufacturing is separate. Thank you. And then Delegate Elmer Begay asked about the certified chapters and how they can do the the procurement for our Navajo contractors. Everything here that's in the legislation and in all of our legislations emphasizes adhering to the procurement code, and that is Navajo preference. So whether it's the house manufacturing sites, or it is procuring services, like you said, for water, solar, bathroom additions, the nation and the executive branch is supposed to follow Navajo Nation law and adhere to the procurement code. In the language that I read about the certified chapters, they would have to do the same thing. And if that means, hiring Navajo contractors, and I think that's exactly, what you're talking about. And the certified chapters would have an opportunity to work with DCD or whoever is administering the particular program that they want to receive funding for to deliver, to ensure that they're receiving the funding and that they're following the procurement code to emphasize Speaker, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I had a little power surge here, so I didn't know if I got disconnected.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. So with respect to the procurement, I think that this emphasizes that you got to use Navajo contractors. If you want to ask that of DOJ or Ledge Council, and I'm not answering the question you need me to, or in the way that you need me to, then please say so, and we can go to them or whomever you'd like to hear from. Thank you, Speaker, and I'll yield my time back to you.
Thank you very much. That Vice Chair Slater, let me go back to the floor, colleagues. Honorable Otto So, you have 44 seconds. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So going twice.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The other thing too is that the fundings that are going to NTUA, my issue is the funding of projects that are for upgrades, not new construction. Have you ever looked at the project listing pertaining to that matter? Because the upgrades, they should be able to pick up the cost because we gave them a debt ceiling for them to seek out these funds on their own. And these aren't, and these are probably not new construction. I think we should really look at new construction, not upgrades, pertaining to how NTUA trying to maneuver this, because that's O&M. That's their responsibility, not the Navajo Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on down, Vice Chair Smith, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. I have a request to amend the amendment here, asking that it's been sent out, and then asking should Sui to consider that. Reserve my time.
Thank you very much with that. 16 seconds, Vice Chair Smith. Moving on down, Vice Chair or Honorable Jimmy Yellow here, 1 minute, 52 seconds. Oh, sorry.
Point of privilege, Speaker.
Sorry, there's a modification request at this time. Point of privilege, Madam Chair, Charles Wu.
Sorry, Speaker. I was just going to ask what was going to happen with Delegate Raymond Smith's amendment request.
Sorry. I was getting ahead of myself there. Vice Chair Smith, there's a modification request. And Honorable Slater's holding the motion. So Mr. Rico, if you could read, well, do we send this out already? When was this sent out? Just now? 6:30. This modification was sent out at 6:31 p.m. 5-6 minutes ago, colleagues. Mr. Rico, if you could read that modification into the record.
Thank you, Speaker, members of 24th Navajo Nation Council. The modification to amendment number 1 is going to be, it is to the current amendment, page 4, at paragraph K. It is changing the deadline for the comprehensive list of projects. So after, on the last sentence of paragraph K, after NNFRF office, let's see, 1 second. It is adding language underscore by no later than September 30th, 2024, and it's overstriking within 90 days after this legislation is fully enacted. Then at subparagraph 1 of paragraph K, after September, let's see, 1 second.
After each project, you have new language by September 30th, 2024, overstriking within 90 days after this legislation is fully enacted, and inserting any before the, overstrike the, and insert unallocated amount, overstrike total allocation. 2, renumber letter to succeeding paragraphs, sections, and exhibits as necessary and appropriate. The council and committee hereby authorize Office of Legislative Services and Office of Legislative Counsel to correct technical errors, including adjustment of comprehensive dollar amounts and insertion or adjusted exhibits consistent with the intent of this amendment. This amendment supersedes all inconsistent language in any other committee or council amendment. 3, the Office of Legislative Services, the Office of Legislative Counsel shall ensure that all exhibits to legislation are updated and consistent with this amendment. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rico. That there's a request to modify Honorable Slater.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Shache, for offering the amended language. The only thing I would ask is Ms. Bobroff sent an email to Delegate Smith, to Mr. Rico, the amendments address, Speaker Damon, and Ms. Yazzie at 5:39 p.m. that I believe included the same language that Shache has in his amendment, and then it also removed the restrictive language about construction ready. And I think that as Delegate Charles Newton and others have honed in on, there is some restrictive language in there, and it may hurt the ability for our chapters to really pursue these important community projects. And I gave you the example of like a cell tower. So my ask is to Delegate Smith, Shache, could you take a look at that and see if you'd be willing to include that in this modification? It removes paragraphs 3 and 4, and then it maintains that language that says, all proposed delegate region projects shall be sufficiently developed such that funding for the projects can be obligated and encumbered in the nation's financial management information system by 5 p.m. on September 30th, 2024, and fully expended by 5 p.m. on September 30th, 2026, or such earlier dates as may be determined by resolution of the Navajo Nation Council. And there's some further language in there, but I would like Delegate Smith to consider that.
Vice Chair Smith.
So thank you, Speaker. Am I getting time taken away from me? Okay, no time taken away. Shache or Satsui? Yes, go ahead and I'll go ahead and recognize your request on that behalf, since you're the amendee party on this, in line with the dates, and I'm trying to ensure that it is in order. Thank you, Satsui. I do agree.
That Mr. Rico, can you read that into the record?
Thank you, Speaker. Members of the 24th Navajo Council. The modification will be on page 4 of 12 and 5 of 12. It is under paragraph L, and it's overstriking paragraphs 3, 3A, 3B, 4, 4A, and 4B. So it will be taking out those paragraphs. Overstrike 3, all pre-construction related projects included in a delegate region project plan shall be project ready, meaning that a project's planning and design work is able to begin once funding is received. Subparagraph A, the council delegate with the assistance of the NNFRF office shall complete a separate division of community development DCD project evaluation form and supporting documents for each proposed pre-construction related project, which shall include project site readiness, valid land withdrawal and permitting approvals, as well as the anticipated timeframe during which the project will be completed. Subparagraph B, the NNFRF office shall submit the fully completed project evaluation form through the DCD portal. If DCD is not the administrative oversight over the proposed project, the NFRF shall also submit the project evaluation form and all supporting documents to the entity that will have administrative oversight over the proposed project. Paragraph 4, construction projects shall be construction ready, meaning that the project's planning and design work has been fully completed and construction is able to begin once the funding is received. Subparagraph A, the council delegate with the assistance of the NNFRF office shall complete the separate DCD project evaluation form for each proposed construction project, which shall include project site readiness, valid land withdrawal, and permitting approvals, as well as the anticipated timeframe during which the project will be completed. Subparagraph B, the NNFRF office shall submit the fully completed project evaluation form and all supporting documents through the DCD portal. If DCD is not the administrative oversight over the proposed project, the NNFRF office shall also submit the project evaluation form and all supporting documents to the entity that will have administrative oversight over the proposed project. End of overstrike and end of modification. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. With that, Vice Chair Smith, you're good with that reading? And that's your full request now for modification.
Yes, Speaker, thank you for that reading. That is exactly correct. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. With that, Honorable Vice Chair Slater, there's a request to modify from Honorable Vice Chair Smith.
Speaker, I accept the modification.
Thank you. With that, second, Honorable Stewart. You good with the
Yes.
modification? Okay, great.
Speaker Callen.
Thank you very much for that. Honorable Keelan Begay, you have no more time on Amendment 1.
Okay. Speaker, point of order.
Point of order by Honorable Keelan Begay.
Speaker, I think we took precedent. Point of order that once the original amendment has made a modification, new time comes into play. I like that from the Legislative Council. Speaker, thank you. Point of order.
I've never recognized that, but I'll go back to Office of Legislative Council. Office of Legislative Council.
Thank you, Speaker. This is Office of Legislative Council. I have to admit, I didn't follow that last bit. As far as what happened, my understanding was that Delegate Smith requested Delegate Slater to modify his amendment. Delegate Slater said yes. And then I'm not sure what the question was after that. I apologize.
The question was from Honorable Keelan Begay, is that because the modification has been modified now to the motion, that we should allow for new time for individuals. We should scratch whatever the debate that we had on the main motion and allow new time. For example, let's say if a delegate has spoken already, and now because the modification has happened, that we're eligible to get their 5 minutes back. I want to state that on the record. We have never had that we have never done that prior. But
Speaker, I have not observed the council doing that. But I do believe that decision lays with you. And then, of course, it will be subject to challenge. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Keelan Begay again. There's been over time frame numerous modifications, and we still stayed with the same lineup after those modifications. Even when we're debating the agenda modification from start to finish, we have never allocated new time for modifications on any motion.
Speaker, point of order.
Yes, Honorable Keelan Begay.
Speaker, as a delegate, some of my colleagues always say that a lot of times the doors close on us to debate additional added amendment to the progress. So I believe that this particular situation is that the original amendment has been changed to new policy that we're going to be acting on, but yet some of us won't be able to debate on it because we have no choice and we have run out of time. Speaker, that's my point of order.
Thank you. Well, there's an option. I understand what you're saying. Colleagues, some of you have not spoken. My recommendation is that Honorable Keelan Begay, if you have some time, to give him some time so he can speak on this motion, which we have done in the past.
Speaker, point of order.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Eugene So, point of order.
My point of order is that language has changed within the amendment that needs to be re-debated by others. It is a change within the amendment. That's how I think my point of order is explained. I can answer me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for clarity, Honorable Eugene, so you don't have any more time to as well. So my suggestion is that colleagues, your colleagues, Honorable Keelan Begay and Honorable Eugene, so would like to speak on this, and if you would like to give them some time, that's a recommendation at this time.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Keelan Begay, Honorable Otto So, point of order. Good evening.
Yes. What I would ask is the formality of the modification. Yes, we practice with when we ran out of time and a modification happened, we just didn't speak on it. But to fix this, I would request that the Honorable Smith just pull back his amendment and and when this vote is taken on Honorable Slater's legislation, he can entertain this amendment. That way, Honorable Keelan Begay and Honorable Eugene So, and even myself, will get time. So that's just my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Again, we have stated precedents that we have numerous times made requests for modifications and still stayed on the same path. And colleagues, if you would like some more time, and if there's delegates who have not spoken, would like to allocate some time right now, colleagues, the suggestion is that Honorable Eugene So, Honorable Keelan Begay would like some time. Moving on down. I'm still working on off reserve time. Yeah, Honorable Yellow Hair, 1 minute 52 seconds. Honorable Yellow Hair, 1 minute 52 seconds.
I have reserved my time, Speaker.
I'll reserve your time at 1 minute 50 seconds.
Speaker.
Yes, Speaker.
This is Edmund Yazzie.
Yes, Chairman.
I would like to be in the sheet pin.
Okay,
Horse pin, full pin.
We'll put you in the pin.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on down, Vice Chair Walker, 18 seconds on reserve time.
I reserve my time.
Time, 16 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Herman Daniels, 1 minute and 29 seconds on reserve time.
Mr. Speaker, this time I'd like to make a motion to cease debate. Thank you. Reserve time.
Reserve time at 1 minute 25 seconds. There's no one who has spoken. Colleagues, there's been no individual who has stated for or against this, just had questions on this and had a debate for 3.5 hours with a break of another 45 minutes in that time frame to have further discussion to review the documents that Honorable Slater has presented. These documents were emailed out to everyone last Thursday, and Honorable Slater did notify everyone that there was going to be an amendment of this type. I do have 4 individuals who keep reserving their time and not using their time. So at this time, I will accept that motion to cease debate. Honorable Daniels.
Second.
Second, my chairman, Edmund Yazzie.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Speaker.
Motion to cease debate is undebatable. That call this needs 16 votes of, or 2/3 of the voting party, voting body. So with that, let's go to board.
Honorable Elmer Begay,
I'll vote red.
Honorable Elmer Begay votes red. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.,
Doug Kale votes red.
Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. votes red. Honorable Paul Begay, Honorable Paul Begay, Honorable Paul Begay did not vote. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, Honorable Nathaniel Brown, Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton,
Charles Newton votes red.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes red. Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty,
Delegate Amber King-Crotty, I vote red. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Canespa Crotty votes red. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.,
I vote green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Mark Freeland,
Green.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona, Honorable Pernell Halona, Honorable Pernell Halona did not vote. Honorable Jamie Hino,
Kenya votes green.
Honorable Jamie Hino votes green. Honorable Vince James,
Delegate James votes red.
Honorable Vince James votes red. Honorable Rick Nez,
Delegate Rick Nez votes red.
Honorable Rick Nez votes red. Honorable Carl Slater,
Delegate Slater, red.
Honorable Carl Slater votes red. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr.,
Green.
Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. votes green. Honorable Otto So, Honorable Otto So,
I vote green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Charlene So,
I vote red.
Honorable Charlene So votes red. Honorable Daniel So, Honorable Daniel So,
I vote red.
Honorable Daniel So votes red. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr.
I vote green.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. votes green. Honorable Edison Wanika.
Green.
Honorable Edison Wanika votes green. Honorable Edwin Yazzie.
Green.
Honorable Edwin Yazzie votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
Delegate Yellowhair votes green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Going back up, Honorable Paul Begay. Honorable Paul Begay votes green via text. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Votes green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Speaker, you have 13 in favor, 9 opposed, and Speaker not voting.
Thank you very much, Ms. Soto. 13 in favor, 9 opposed. Speaker not voting, motion fails. That, we're going back to the main motion. I do have Honorable Chairman Rick Nez in the queue at this time. And then
thank you.
Honorable Chairman Edmund Yazzie. With that, Chairman, floor is yours.
Honorable Speaker Damon, other Honorable Slater, certainly appreciate your amendment. I see that you put a lot of work into it. I say pension that you like Henson. I don't but you will kiss conditionally. I know what the you will kiss the teaching Korobe Ladi place. Saba Panaidedish kissing Leniki. We had a food summit over at San Juan College a couple weeks ago. A lot of farmers and local leaders expressed concern with agriculture. And part of agriculture is the irrigation system. One of my legislations, the Gold King Mine Spill, is not going to be enough money. So I would ask if possible, maybe our legislative council could also help in having funding secured for the Hogback pump house and the cost about $300,000. Is there room for that? Can we do that? With all the food prices going up and everything going up, you know, people are really wanting to work their farms.
When?
And this is one way to do it. But when Sancho, today, how about this? Shanala, the Hagila pesos and the others, a big $8.8 million again, Niche allocate Elia, that's so big. Shananta, back to you, Speaker. Thank you. I reserve my time.
Thank you very much. 3 minutes and 3 seconds. That, moving on down, Chairman Edmund Yazzie.
Speaker, this is Edmund. Members of the council and everyone that's still listening on the amendment. And again, as stated before, do appreciate the amendment and the main legislation. And I just want to express to my colleagues that we approved this. And so, as we all say, get the fundings out to the chapters where it's needed. And what the chair had stated on livestock and irrigation, I do agree. And I want to just ask the speaker and the staff if we can possibly, maybe at the next NABI, we can look into the insurance for the ranchers. I know the chapters got funded with hay and with grain and for livestock, but we also approved again from the last council the insurance in case of there's a drought, and not knowing that it was going to happen. And I'm thankful that we past council voted for it. And in that insurance package, that's the drought is the qualification to get funding to out the ranchers and then maybe to our Navajo ranch office. And so, Speaker, I would like if our staff could look into that and maybe possibly put it on the NABI report, and then one of the delegates could sponsor the bill and dip into the insurance and give feed and grain to our ranchers out and about. It's just, we all know there's a forest fire now in Flagstaff, and with the weather condition now, the wind, it's just blown sand all over our grass and all. And I'm glad we're listening to this and debating this legislation. And I just want to encourage my colleagues, please, let's vote and get the fundings out and about. I know it was indicated earlier that we want more for our chapters, and I do want more for our chapters, but we are thankful in whatever we get, and we can go from there. And so I just wanted to indicate that, Speaker, and I do not want to reserve my time. And so I'm ready to vote on the amendment and the main legislation. And just on behalf of our constituents and just for them to get some kind of relief on water and power and feed and more law enforcement and to departments of the executive department. So it's a prime opportunity. And yesterday I had the opportunity to meet with Governor Pentia from the Zuni tribe, and we were attending a graduation reception, and he asked if we approved our fundings, and we said that I said we are still trying to work that out and iron it out and get it approved. And I asked him, Governor Pentia, if the council had already approved their funds, and they said they approved it a long time ago and they're utilizing it now. So I just would ask my colleagues, let's approve the legislation, Speaker. That is all I have to say and share. Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman Edwin Yazzie. Sorry, colleagues, I was trying to clarify some things here. That I don't have anybody else in the queue at this time. But so let me go ahead and go back to reserve time. I have Madam Chair Charles Newton, 3 minutes, 56 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm waiting for an amendment. That's why I keep reserving my time. Reserve my time.
3 minutes, 53 seconds. Moving on down, Madam Chair Karate, 1 minute, 54 seconds.
Speaker, I'm working on an amendment, so I'll reserve my time. Thank you.
1 minute, 52 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Elmer Brigade, 24 seconds.
Speaker, reserve my time. Thank you.
22 seconds. Moving on down, Vice Chair Smith, 16 seconds on reserve time.
I'll reserve my time, Speaker.
That 14 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Jimmy Yellow here, 1 minute, 50 seconds.
Hello, Yate. Good afternoon, Speaker. Still on the 24 Council, my colleagues. I don't know esto. Y que pesa para nit. Es de yo pesa yo bent on Nishiba T. With my special request, I'd like to request to get a copy of the district branch. How many vacancies do they have as of today? Since this is in reference to a money that we're talking about, how many vacancies from the district branch employees? I'd like to reserve my time, Speaker.
You want to know the vacancies for the judicial branch? On Wheeler?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Not,
Staff, if we could reach out to DPM and see if they could get that information. I'm not too sure if they can get that right away on Wheel here, Miss Toddy or Miss Thomasita Woody is available, or we can get that information. We'll reach out to Chief of Staff Paulson. Oh, no. Reach out to Mr. Stephen at City. And Sharon Watchman, the HR director, maybe they have that information already too as well. That on Wheel here, we're working on that request.
thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Speaker, this is Dana. Could I address the council very briefly?
Good evening, Miss Barbara. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to let council know that I think now I have about 5 amendments that I'm working on. They're somewhat complex. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm working on them, but they are taking a little bit of time. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barbara. That, colleagues, where we have here.
Motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair Crotty, I haven't recognized you yet, but I can when I come back around.
Speaker, I think I can motion. Do I need to? What is the requirement to motion to adjourn?
When I come back to you, when you're in the queue, and when you're utilizing your own time, Madam Chair Crotty. So, like, I'm going on reserve time now, and then I will come back to you, and most likely, since everybody's reserving their time, I will come back to you within the next four allocations of time.
Okay. Well, anyone can adjourn, right, Speaker?
Yes.
Thank you.
That, Honorable Vice Chair Walker, on reserve time on Amendment 1. 16 seconds.
I reserve my time.
14 seconds. Honorable Honorable Herman Daniels, 1 minute, 25 seconds on reserve time.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Apologize. Thank you very much, Kudo. We've been on this amendment for, we're gonna have more amendments. But I was ready to vote on this amendment, but Kudo, yeah, and that's vehicle. I'm pretty sure that we're not gonna finish this this evening. We have up to midnight, but we don't put on this case. So this amendment. So the Office of Legislative Counsel, she's still working on those amendments. So with that, I think Delegate Crowdy, so with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Your time.
Second Yellowhair.
Okay, with that, Nation Council Rules of Order, Rule 27, motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn shall take precedence over all other motions, including a vote in progress. That motion to adjourn by Honorable Herman Daniels, second by Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. This is at 7:15 p.m.
Point of privilege, Speaker.
Point of privilege, Honorable Slater, before we go to a vote.
So based off the precedent that we established earlier, when this legislation comes back to the Navajo Nation Council, will we resume in this amendment and then continue forward?
Yes. For the vote this morning, I will listen to council.
So I'll have an opportunity at that time to respond to Delegate Otto and Shanella, Delegate Rick Nez, because they asked some questions. And
yes.
Okay. I'll keep my notes on their questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That colleagues, motion to adjourn 7:15 p.m. this evening. If this passes, I'll set some time frame and parameters that we've been talking with the sponsor and also other delegates who have sponsored legislations and Office of Legislative Services. If this passes, colleagues, motion to adjourn 7:15 p.m. Let's go to board.
Honorable Elmer Begay.
I vote red.
Honorable Elmer Begay votes red. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr.
Delegate Key Allen votes red. Thank you.
Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. votes red. Honorable Paul Begay.
Delegate Paul Begay votes red.
Honorable Paul Begay votes red. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Charles Newton votes green.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes green. Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty.
Delegate Amber Canesba-Crotty votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Canesba Crotty votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. did not vote. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Mark Freeland.
I vote green.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Jamie Hiniel.
He votes green.
Honorable Jamie Hiniel votes green. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Rick Nez.
Rickez votes green.
Honorable Rick Nez votes green. Honorable Carl Slater.
Green.
Honorable Carl Slater votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes red. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. did not vote. Honorable Aroso. Honorable Aroso. Honorable Aroso did not vote. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel So. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote red.
Honorable Daniel So votes red. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr.
I vote red.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. votes red. Honorable Edison Wanika.
Red.
Honorable Edison Wanika votes red. Honorable Edmund Yazzie.
Red.
Honorable Edmund Yazzie votes red. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair.
I vote green.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Going back up, Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Honorable Nathaniel Brown did not vote. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. did not vote. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So did not vote. Speaker, with a vote of 12 in favor, 8 opposed, and Speaker not voting.
Nathaniel Brown, I vote green.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. 13 in favor, 8 opposed, and Speaker not voting.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Officially adjourned at 7:15 p.m. with 13 in favor, 8 opposed, Speaker not voting. Colleagues, in talking in reference to working with Office of Legislative Services, Office of Legislative Counsel, please, colleagues that are working with Office of Legislative Counsel, can you please work with them to have these amendments ready to go and drawn up and ready for the next special session. There is going to be a petition that most likely that petition is going to be for 2 days next week. And the reason why is because this week, the Office of Legislative Services is mandated or is meeting on Thursday and Friday. Unfortunately, if they don't meet, they cancel. I don't know if we can get a refund on the contract that those contracts have been signed. So what we're talking is possibly there might be a special 2-day session on this legislation going forward and other legislations on next Thursday and Friday. Prior to that, I'll have to work with Chairman Rick Nez to see if there's a possibility that RDC could have a half-a-day work session or a half-a-day meeting on Wednesday, the 22nd, and then we could have a non-etic committee in the afternoon on Wednesday. All colleagues will put further details together, but I just want to let you know that that's when, as soon as we can have a next special Navajo Nation Council session. Thank you.
Speaker Freeland.
Yes.
Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Freeland.
Will 86 be considered old business?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
unless if you won't. Thank you. All right. That, colleagues, safe travels. Have a good evening.